Hello, and welcome back to the Battle Frontier podcast, where we aim to help you level up in your journey as a competitive Pokemon TCG player. I'm Aaron Curry. Here with me, as always, is my co-host John Orgel. And this week, we're going to be doing what I guess has become tradition for us, and looking at a set review for the upcoming Destined Rivals expansion, which will have pre-releases starting this weekend. But before we get into that, we're going to have John lead us in a time capsule segment, and then we'll go through the first half of that set review, doing the grass types through the psychic types, and we'll take a little bit of a break to go through Blaine's quiz show, give everybody a breather, a nice, airing of the cards between halves of the set, where we'll pick things up with our fighting types and continue on through the trainers. But without further ado, John, I want to know, what were you up to in Pokemon this week?
Pokemon was fun this week. So I did do the Professor Cup Saturday morning.
Okay.
I played Dragapult, and I just took out. I think I played that top 4 list from the Puerto Rican player. His name escapes me at the moment. But basically the one we were talking about last week, where it was just a thin Ducksnore line with Halucha and Monkey Dory,
Okay.
and the Luminous Energy and all that. And I took out the league headquarters and put in Magikarp, and then took out the switch and put in the what's it called? Turos scenario.
Sure.
Just as a way to remove Magikarp to help alleviate some of the win conditions. So I played, I think, against like Dragapult Mirror maybe round 1. I'm trying to remember. It was pretty quick. It was like a quick Badoo game. It was the Seek game, and I won with taking a KO with Magikarp.
Nice.
So that was pretty fun. So I won round 1. Round 2, I paired into probably my worst possible matchup in Blissey, and I got a really slow, terrible start, and they were able to just like heal any damage I did. Yeah, so it was basically over after a few turns.
Yeah.
It was just kind of delaying the inevitable. Like once they establish, like, they got the turn 2 or turn 1 even TM Turbo Energize with like 3 Monkey Dory on board and 2 Blissey, and at that point I just can't do much. So that was tough. So that was, what it is. I didn't get any like Ducksnore established to be able to take a one shot on a Blissey. By the time I like was able to stabilize, they were able to just, board wipe me out of any Ducksnore pieces. So that was okay. So I lost round 2, and then round 3 I played against a Guardy player, and I didn't really set up against that guy. And this was the hide condition where you just have to hide your Magikarp. So it was just basically just playing standard.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of added like challenge or difficulty elements to it. So, yeah, it was kind of like, I think Blissey was a good call. I just kind of dropped out of the tournament at that point. After 2 losses, I think I was at a top cut.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that's the case because my friend Ben played to the end, and he ended up with 2 losses and got like 18th or something. So I quit that and was just like, all right, I still want to play Pokemon. I just don't want to do this. So thankfully there was a league challenge right down the road for me at Modern Tabletop, and I played in that, and I did okay. I won the first 2 rounds, and then I played the 3rd round, and my opponent was a really nice guy. We had a really, really good game, and he gave me his prize support afterwards. After the really grindy match we had, he was just going for the points and said he didn't need it, so that was really nice of him. So shout outs to Nick Allman for that. It was we all agreed before the game started, or before the tournament started, that we would do a Prismatic Evolutions ETB. So it was really nice prizing for that one.
That's sick.
Yeah, man. So that was really cool. I was like, it's so over to we're so back, the whole just like flip the script kind of thing of the day. And that was fun. And yeah, the rest of the weekend, we just did a bunch of yard work and housework Sunday. Just homeowner stuff.
Yeah.
And we hung out at like Riverside Shrimp Shack where they had like a really good cover band going on Sunday night with some friends. So it's a really nice, chill evening. That was Saturday night, sorry, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, it was good. I did find out yesterday afternoon. I got the email that I did not get selected for the World Championship, so I will not be judging. So hopefully one of us can still make it, but it will not be me this time. So, and that's to say that I was disappointed, of course, but it's not like my whole season rides on me going to one event, right? I still feel like I grew a lot as a judge. I learned a lot of different areas and different aspects of the game. I have a more holistic approach to judging. Like I'm able to see it more from a judge's perspective than just a player's perspective that is a judge.
Sure.
I learned a lot and I still accomplished a lot. I will be going to 3 ICs this year, international championships. So I'm really happy with just the level of performance I've had. Everything else that I've applied for, I have achieved. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, it's a bummer not to be going to Worlds. We did like start to plan a vacation and all that, and so we're having to pivot and possibly do something else. But that's okay. I'll still be involved in Pokemon, just not involved in World Championship this year. So, but I'll still be at NAIC as a floor judge for the Masters division. So that'll be what I'm looking forward to next. But that's enough yammering from me. What about you, man? How was your weekend? Yeah, I heard you went to some tournaments as well.
I did. So it was funny. You messaged me about the initial results of your Professor Cup run, and for some reason in my head, I had totally forgotten that that's what you were doing, and I thought that you had somehow participated in a different tournament that had already started and finished that many rounds by the time I was about to walk into the store to register for the League Cup that I was playing in that day. But I did go to a League Cup in the Orlando area, and I think we had 19 Masters. So played 5 rounds of Swiss and played into top four. Started out 2-0 playing Eevee Box. Saw the room or expected the room to be totally full of Bolt based on the regionals results from a couple weekends ago, and noticed that Eevee Box is a pretty good Bolt matchup. And so played against Bolt round one. I started my turn, first turn, like got the Rotom, did everything. He goes Ogre Pond Pass, no other basics. I get turn two Flare and kill it. And so I have a nice 28-minute or 25-minute wait between the start of round one and the start of round two. Then played against a Guardy deck and did a lot of Angel Lighting, managed to win that game as well. And then ended up like punted a game in round three against Raging Bolt, then turned what I think would have been a win if I had played properly. Just took the wrong things off of Brock Scouting, and we ended up tying that round instead. So ended up having to play out round four against an Enzorark deck where my opponent managed to prize both of his Darmanitans.
Oh.
And he just told me that was the case. And I guess,
Okay.
I mean, I took his word for it, but
Sure.
so he like got his Reshiram out. I bossed it up and KO'd it. He KO'd something, recovered the Reshiram, KO'd something. I counter-catchered it up, KO'd it again. He still doesn't have a Darmanitan active, so he starts using Flare with his Zoroarks, and it just didn't go well for him from there. So ended up 3-0-1 there, ID round 5, played against Brandon Salazar playing Raging Bolt in top 4.
Oh, wow.
Ended up taking that down 2-0, and then played against another Raging Bolt in the finals, and won that series 2-1. So managed to get my second League Cup win for the season, clawing my way up into the bottom ranks of the invite chase.
There you go.
Almost. I think I've got another top 8 that if I could replace would put me like right there on the bottom border of having an invite. So that's something that I'm hoping to achieve. On Friday this week, there's a cup that I'm going to go to. Not going to be playing much Pokemon this coming weekend because my son has a baseball tournament that it's going to take up a good bit of the day on Saturday and Sunday. So just not going to be much Pokemon going on there. And then on Sunday this week was Mother's Day. So I went out with my wife and my sister-in-law, and my parents came up too. We went out and had kind of an early lunch, not really brunch because we went to like a local shrimp place, but just early lunch for that, and then hung it at home for a little bit, playing some board games with my parents until they had to leave, and then we went over to my sister-in-law's house and played some more board games. So it was
Nice.
just a nice, fun, calm, casual day, and yeah, it's a good weekend in my book.
Yeah, man, that sounds great. Congrats on the cup win. I
Yeah,
mean, that playmat, you showed me that thing. It's a sick playmat. If you guys haven't seen it yet, it's the artwork from the Journey Together box, and I think it's Iono, right?
no,
Or is it N?
it's N and Zoroark. That
Sick.
the
Love
Iono
that.
ones are the I think they're for regionals.
Regionals.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that was really cool to see. So that's one. I don't know if you don't want it, I might have to find my hands on that one. So we'll see. We'll see.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, maybe. I might have to trade you. I was sorting bulk today at the card store, and I pulled a card out for you. So for the next time I see you, it's a
Oh, cool.
Chinese Fuecoco. So that one's pretty cool. And then I pulled out some other cards for me.
How the heck does somebody even
Um,
have that?
I don't know, dude. This is for my brother. Shout out to Patrick. So this is a Chinese pseudo wudo. And they have some cool like hollow patterns
Oh, that one
going
is
on. So they
cool.
have like this ultra ball. Sorry if this just becomes story time or whatever. Sorry for our audio listeners too. You have to go to YouTube to watch this. And they have a bunch of different Quaxleys with different hollow patterns.
Interesting.
So that one, then that one with like little stars going on.
Huh. Yeah, I know
And
the
then
Chinese sets are kind of all over the place. They're not really like
Pokeball.
one-to-one with anything that we have printed over
Right.
here, and they just kind of seem to like I know the Terra Arcanine from the base Scarlet and Violet set got an illustration rare in China for some
Oh, no
reason,
way.
and that's just an artwork that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world and likely never will, because why would they release that at this point?
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
a set from 2 years ago. But yeah, interesting. Those are super cool. That Fuecoco's
Yeah,
sick.
yeah. I thought they were pretty sick. And they're not that expensive. I mean, it was like I think the Ultra Ball and the Fuecoco are like $3 on eBay. So
Okay.
it's a cool thing if you collect. I don't really collect that much, but I thought it was interesting. I thought you might like the Fuecoco. So I pulled that aside,
Yeah, I love that
and I'll
little
give
guy,
it to
man.
you in New Orleans. Yeah, yeah. We love our title characters here on the Battle Frontier.
Heck yeah.
But other things we do love is the time capsule, and I wanted to feature a deck similar to what just won our most recent regionals, and also akin to a deck we might talk about coming up. Sorry, here we go. In our set review is the Mewtwo's deck. This is similar to that. This is a Bucephalon GX deck. I think I talked about Baby Blounds at one point on this podcast. So don't fact check me. This is kind of another parallel universe to that one.
Sure.
So this, before we had Baby Blounds, we had Bucephalon GX. And my brother played this deck a lot, so I had to play against him a lot. But Bucephalon GX is a two prizer in this era. They had GXs before we had EXs. Lowercase, we had GXs. So this was kind of like the second. Well, I guess we had Vs too. So EXs, Vs, and then back then before that is GXs. This is the Sun and Moon era. So Bucephalon's a 180 HP basic Pokemon. That's an Ultra Beast. This was the gimmick of the time. They were just like a alternate, kind of like our ancient and future Pokemon, similar to that. It had 3 different attacks. Stupid ads. The first one is Bursting Burn. It is just for 1 fire. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now burned and confused. So it was a really good kind of stall attack. It had a GX attack, which was similar to the V-Star mechanic where you can only use 1 GX attack per game. And this one was one that you used a lot in the early time of the game, where you could save it for later and take your last prize. It's simply discard one of your prize cards. If it's an energy card, attach it to one of your Pokemon. So it's essentially just taking a prize card for free with the added benefit of maybe some energy acceleration if it is an energy card. And instead of going to your hand, it just goes to your discard pile. But probably what's the most important thing is the second attack listed here, Mind Blown. It's 50 times. It says put any amount of fire energy attached to your Pokemon in the Lost Zone. It does 50 damage for each card put in the Lost Zone in this way. So we did have the Lost Zone mechanic in this era. And similar to Mewtwo and Raging Bolt, we have the uh, discarding energy essentially. This is a little bit less good in that it puts the energy in the Lost Zone. But we do interact with our discard pile with this deck in a lot of other ways. We have other Pokemon cards, primarily Naganadel, which is a basic or a stage 1 Pokemon that has the ability charging up. It says once during your turn before you attack, you may attach a basic energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. So this is just the way to accelerate energy onto the field. Blacephalon GX can discard from anywhere. So a lot of times you are discarding from Naganadel, or I guess I keep saying discarding. Put fire energy from your field to the Lost Zone, essentially. I'm just saying discarding because that's what I'm more used to saying, but
Sure.
that's not exactly how the mechanic works. But anyway, Turning Point is also a relevant attack here. It says if you have exactly 3 prize cards remaining, this attack does 80 more damage, so 160. So you could use this as a mid-game attacker potentially. You didn't really get a lot of times to use it for the extra damage, but 80 for 3 was somewhat relevant. There was some, math that worked on.
Yeah.
Just to go over the rest of this for Pokemon, Poipole is just your basic that evolves into Naganadel. Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot to go there. Ditto Prism Star. So Prism Star is another gimmick they had during this time. Prism Star, it just has the Prism Star rule. It says you can't have more than one Prism Star card with the same name in your deck. If a Prism Star card would go to the discard pile, you put it in the Lost Zone instead. So if this gets knocked out, instead of going to your discard pile, it goes to the Lost Zone. You can't recover it. But Ditto is probably one of the most powerful Prism Star cards, if not the most powerful one printed. It has just the ability. It has no attacks, but that ability is probably one of the most strong ones we've seen. It says the ability is called Almighty Evolution. It says once during your turn before you attack, you may put any stage 1 card from your hand onto this Pokemon to evolve it. You can't use this ability during your first turn or the turn this Pokemon was put into play. So it just counts as a basic of any ilk. Like you can evolve it into anything. And that is good because then you're allowed to have some more flexibility. If you were just to run the Poipole and the Naganadel line here, probably wouldn't run Ditto. You might just to get a third or like a 5th potential basic. This only runs a 3/3. But we do run another evolution line here, and that is in the Alolan Muck line. Alolan Muck is the stage 1 that you want to evolve into. It is like a soft counter to a lot of things. It has the ability Power of Alchemy. It says each basic Pokemon in play, each player's hand, and each player's discard pile has no abilities. So it does shut off your own Ditto, but if you were able to evolve this from Ditto, it didn't really matter. It shuts off your opponent's Ditto on a lot of matchups, which was relevant. And then it shuts off a lot of basic Pokemon coming into play. So like Tapu Lele was a really big card right now. And I think we have a bunch of other Prism Stars that had some really good abilities. If we look at this era, we had, like Reshizard and Pikarom run the Tapu Koko Prism Star and Volcanion. So all those kind of decks run a lot of basics that run abilities. So this just neutralizes all of that. Similar to like a Garbode or Garutoxin, but you don't have to have a tool attached, and it only affects basic Pokemon. It has a hefty 4 retreat cost, which was annoying. So there are some ways to deal with that. But yeah, I mean, realistically, if your opponents, they could stall this up there. But you run primarily the main way to switch in this format is Guzma, and we'll get into that in just a second. To finish the Pokemon line real quick, we have a really impactful Pokemon called Marshadow. It's just a psychic basic Pokemon with 70 hit points, but it has a really strong ability and Let Loose. It's when you place from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may have each player shuffle their hand into their deck and then draw 4 cards. So it's Judge as an ability on a basic Pokemon. So it was really strong turn 1 or turn 2 to just disrupt your opponent's setup by playing Marshadow, or if you needed to potentially dig for something, you could like maybe try to get a supporter like a Lily turn 1. You could use the Let Loose. The supporter line here is pretty just consistency focused. You run a 4 Lily, 4 Cynthia. Lily's just this is kind of the era where we didn't have as much strong draw support as we had in the past. We had like professors. This was before professors research, and so we were running stuff like Birch's observation or something like that. So definitely a little bit weaker than we have right now. This card probably, I don't know if it would see play in our current standard, but
Well,
it
at,
is pretty
at
decent.
at the time, you could play supporters going first as well, couldn't you?
True. You
Which,
could.
so in the way that this card is worded, I have no doubt it would see absolutely zero play currently, just because it's useless going first. Or I guess it would put us into a format where everyone is always opting second, and it's still you'd have to like the feels bad of on the coin flip you have a card in your deck that's just draw till you have 6, which is
Yeah.
not super great.
No, just to read it real quick, it says draw till you have 6. If it's your first turn, you can draw till you have 8. So basically, yeah, pretty lackluster draw, I'd say. The other draw supporter we had that was probably played in the most decks is Cynthia. It's a supporter that says shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 6. So definitely not as strong as we have with currently with Professor's Research and Iono. So this deck definitely uh, used a lot of other things to have consistency. But making up for that inconsistent draw is probably the most consistent, best boss supporter we've ever had is Guzma, your boy. It's switch your opponent's benched Pokemon with their active. If you do, you switch your active Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. So basically, not is it just a boss, it's also a switch card. And that was really, really helpful moving some of your stuff that might get stuck in the active. So this was just like a 2-for-1 in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the reason I chose this list over some other lists of Blacephalon is I really like the inclusion of Welder here. Welder's a supporter that says attach up to 2 fire energy from your hand to your Pokemon. If you do, you draw 3 cards. So this deck can struggle to get out of the gate sometimes if you're not able to discard fire energy, or if you're at a point where you're reaching for the KO with Mind Blown, but you're just coming up a little bit short because you can't get extra energy out. Welder kind of helps you with that, especially early game. Later game, Beast Ring takes over. Beast Ring is an item card that says you can only play this if your opponent has exactly 3 or 4 prize cards remaining. It says search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards and attach them to your Ultra Beasts, then shuffle your deck. So this was kind of the jet fuel that made this deck much more stronger than it would be normally. Normally, you would have to just discard and hope to rely upon Naganadel, Naganadel, however you want to say it, to power up your Pokemon. Beast Ring was definitely like a little extra boost for sure. Especially mid game, you could just load up your board and make it really, really hard for your opponent to do much. You could spread your energy out, get multiple Blacephalon in play, and play towards an end, like a checkmate board state pretty easily. Our ball search is Ultra Ball, which y'all should be familiar with. Discard and then search deck for Pokemon. And then we have Mysterious Treasure, which was really, really strong in this deck. It says discard a card from your hand. If you do, you search for a Psychic or a Dragon Pokemon, reveal it, put it in your hand, then you shuffle your deck. So able to get the Poipole and the Ganadel, the Muckline, or Marshadow. So pretty strong. Everything but the Ditto, essentially, and the Blacephalon. In addition to the ball search, we have the Stadium Ultra Space, which we just run as a 1 of in here. It says once during your turn, you can search your deck for an Ultra Beast card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle your deck. So just like in other gimmicks, we have other, like this Stadium is a gimmick stadium that allows you to get all your attackers and all your Naganadels to set up. We have an Energy Switch to help power up a Blacephalon in 1 turn, a Field Blower, which tools were really important. We had a skateboard was pretty prominent in this format, which is similar, or not a skateboard. Was it rescue board?
The rescue board is what we have now.
We do have a skate. Okay, I was right. A skateboard is what we had in this format. So And then we also run Lysander Labs to shut down. One of the cards that was most important in this format was the Stellar Wish Jirachi. I think it's Stellar Wish, right? I'm trying to remember.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think.
Let me look at this ran it right. Yeah, Jirachi. So Stellar Wish, which it basically was run as a pretty good consistency card. This would Lysander Labs and Field Blower would shut that down. Lysander Labs is another stadium that just says all Pokemon tool cards in play, both yours and your opponent, have no effect. So it just negates the rescue board effect. And then a really, really powerful Prism Star Stadium we had access to is Heat Factory. It says once during your turn, once during each player's turn, that player may discard a fire energy card from the hand. If they do, you draw 3 cards. So just an extra way to supplement your draw, which was really nice. And yeah, this is just a build up a board and swing for lots of damage deck. You run 15 fire just so you have enough energy to close the game out. And just to show you the last trick this thing had was Beast Energy. This is a colorless energy, but when it's attached to Ultra Beasts, it provides every type of energy. It also has a secondary effect of allowing your Ultra Beast Pokemon to do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So just extra damage and any type of energy on a special energy. And the way this interacted with Blacephalon is Mind Blown did do extra damage before you discarded it. It checked to see what you were discarding. It calculated the damage total, it then discarded that damage, and then applied all the damage. So that was the order that this happened. So if you had Beast Energy and a Fire, you would, in Mind Blown, discarding or putting 2 energy in the Lost Zone, you could put both of those in the Lost Zone, and you would do 130 damage. So that's the principle of the deck. Some disruption, some just raw power, and then a lot of just good hit hard, hit fast. Not a lot of. I mean, the only hand disruption we had is Marshadow in this, and that was pretty common. There wasn't N or Iona as we have in this format. So Marshadow is as close as we had to hand disruption.
Yeah, and there's a card that people pretty universally hated.
Yeah, Marshadow definitely did not. I mean, it just kind of made it to where a lot of your games, if your opponent used Let Loose turn 1 before you had even drawn a card, like if they go first, Let Loose turn 1, it just feels pretty bad because you're not able to really play a full game where you're able to set up a lot of times.
Yeah.
You're really just drawing 4 maybe, and then 5 with a card for turn. And so you're really just limited as to what you can do as opposed to the 8 or 6 or so, 7 for turn that you would get before getting let loosed. But this was a really strong deck. Ian Robb won this tournament that I'm looking at. This is his list from not Milwaukee, Madison 2019. And this deck had a long shelf life, I'd say. If we go back and look at it. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, it existed for a long time. I know notably at one point Shintaro Ito got second at Worlds with it. But that was a slightly different version of this deck. By that point we had cards like Naganadel GX and the Dane existed, like once the tag teams started coming on the scene.
Yeah, so it definitely changed a little bit as it went on. And definitely but I mean, this deck was, I'd say, had a really long shelf life and was really strong for most of that. It had like the kind of same reputation, I'd say, that like a Raging Bolt had, where it was seen as more of a straightforward deck than some of the other ones in this format. But I don't know if that was as well deserved as Raging Bolt. And Raging Bolt's kind of pivoted now to being more of a with the Noctowl line. You can search a lot more. This had some counterplay, but it was a little more straightforward, I'd say, than Raging Bolt is currently.
Sure.
So this was like this is your first tournament and you're trying to be a competitive player, go ahead and play this kind of deck with this format, I'd say, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys. That was my pick for the time capsule this week.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, decks like that can be a lot of fun. Obviously, we've seen a lot of people do gravitate to decks like the Eel deck that I talked about last week, or this Blacephalon Naganadel deck, or Raging Bolt, or presumably when this new set that we're going to talk about here in just a second comes out, the Team Rocket's Mewtwo archetype. It's just people like doing big damage numbers with big basics. It's just a very popular strategy that people have. And, I think that's as good of a segue as any to go ahead and jump into our set review. And so we're going to look at all of these translations coming to us courtesy of Justin Basil. So Justin Basil's website with the Destined Rivals card translation section. Unfortunately, from the images we're going to see, all of the card text on the cards themselves are in Japanese, but we do have these nice, well-written English translations to work off of. And so Destined Rivals is notably going to be a combination of cards for us comprised of the Heatwave Arena set, as well as the Glory of Team Rocket set from Japan, and the Marnie and Steven battle decks from Japan, which notably are also being released separately for us as battle deck items. I believe those actually come out this Friday.
Yeah, that's correct. They come out a little bit earlier, but the legality of the decks will still be the same as the rest of the set. So they
Right.
still are, like, the set numbers for those are included into um, our Destined Rivals set.
Right.
So the set legality is always 2 weeks after the set release. The set release is not this Friday coming up, but the next Friday. So it'll be 2 weeks after next Friday. It'll be, let's see, the 30th of May. Or sorry, no, that's incorrect. The 6th of June will be when we have
It'll be
the set legal.
that
So the weekend
Friday right
before.
before NAIC.
You got it.
Awesome. Love brand new formats with cards that release 2 weeks before travel. Super
Yep.
great. But yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully everybody can get the cards this time around.
Yeah.
I know we've seen a little bit more availability. I think Journey Together was more accessible than some of the other sets we
absolutely.
had. Yeah,
It was
so
definitely
hopefully
better than
scalpers
Surging
don't
Sparks.
steal all your. Yeah, hopefully scalpers don't steal all your sealed product, or that you're able to buy the singles you need in time for NAIC.
Yeah. So, like we said, with the combination of those two sets, we do have the continuation of the owner's Pokemon mechanic. So, in addition to the Marnie and Steven cards, we're going to see cards here from Ethan, or I guess it's the protagonist from Gold and Silver, the male protagonist from Gold and Silver. Also, Cynthia, Team Rocket, and Misty are the other trainers that we'll have access to. So, the first card up here is Ethan's Pinsir, which just does Vice Grip for 20 for 1 grass, and then 1 point return is for 3 colorless, is 70 damage attack, but if any of your Ethan's Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack during your opponent's last turn, this attack does 100 more damage. And so notably, there is a form of energy acceleration that is available to Ethan's Pokemon that can make this 3 colorless cost a lot more manageable. And 170 on a grass type is enough to knock out Grimmsnarl, Hydreigon, and Charizard. And so a single prizer that's able to return KO a bunch of these big beefy stage 2 dark types is something that you may want to keep in mind if you are planning to play an Ethan's deck moving forward.
Yeah, definitely good to keep in mind.
Yanma's pretty skippable, but next card up would be Yanmega EX.
Yeah, so it has a decent ability. It says Bug Boost is the name of it. It says once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from your bench to the active spot, you may search your deck for up to 3 grass energy and attach them to this Pokemon. Then shuffle your deck. So not when it evolves, when it moves from the bench to the active. So much more accessible as an attack, or as abilities go. And the attack is okay. It's Jet Cyclone for 210. It does for grass, colorless. It does 210 damage and then move 3 energies from this Pokemon to one of your bench Pokemon. So you're able to have some synergy with that. 280 is a good, decent chunk of HP for a stage 1. I think that's pretty typical for stage 1 EXs at this point. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I don't know how much this will see play, but the fact that you have energy acceleration for grass is nice. There's not a whole lot of energy acceleration for grass at the moment, as far as I remember. So definitely something to keep in mind is a stage 1, especially. It's kind of nice. You don't necessarily need to use this attack. You could potentially power this up to get energy in play and then maybe discard it with something else if you wanted to take advantage of that. With like a, I don't know, Raging Bolt or something crazy like that. Potentially that would be an option.
Yeah, if Ogerpon's not your speed for some reason.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's fair.
The cool thing in like the way that this attack is costed, just being 3 grass and a colorless, it interacts really well with cards like Jet Energy. So you get the Jet
True.
Energy, provides the colorless cost, and then you go fetch the 3 grass, and suddenly your Yanmega is able to attack. And so the kind of, I guess the thing that I would think you would pair this with would be something like Iron Valiant, where you're already looking to do a bunch of switching effects anyway. And you could also notably, when you use Jet Cyclone, pass those 3 grass energies back to something like Iron Hands on your bench and just give you a means of accelerating to that. Is it better than Joltik? Probably not, but it's just another option. And again, just a stage 1 grass type with a relatively awkward HP total for some of these dark type stage 2 EXs to hit into is something that might be worth considering moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, and it's nice to have as a grass type that is weak to lightning as opposed to weak to
Sure.
fire.
Yeah.
So if fire is ever a super prominent type, that could be relevant. Next one I wanted to look at was the Cynthia's Roserade from
Yes.
a little bit further down.
Yeah, right here.
Yep. So just not a good attack, but the ability is nice. So just kind of continuing gimmicks we've seen with Pokemon, where all the trainers Pokemon play off of each other. Similar to like the Snorlax we had in the Hops deck, this one has an ability Glory Yell. It says your Cynthia's Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon before applying weakness and resistance. So it is on a stage 1, which is a little less optimal, I'd say, than Snorlax. But it is a little less, burdensome to try to attack with. It only has, or to keep in play, it only has the 1 retreat cost as opposed to Snorlax's, I think, 3 or 4. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Right. And notably, this card will be very easy to get out as well. And that's something we'll get into a little bit more when we talk about some of these other Cynthia's Pokemon. I mean, at the end of the day, when you see the Cynthia's archetype as a collective whole, it's really a callback to the Dragon's Exalted Fluffy Chomp or Altaria Garchomp, where the Cynthia's archetype is all about just swarming all of your Cynthia's Pokemon and then amplifying the damage with this Roserade sitting on your bench.
Yep.
Next big impactful card we can expect to see a lot of is Shaman. And this won't necessarily go into every single deck, but a lot of our evolving decks, like your Garchomps, not Garchomp, well, maybe Garchomp, but Dragapult, Gardevoir, Charizard, just decks that are trying to evolve, get your big stage 2 attacker or stage 2 backline Pokemon into play that has a vulnerable basic as part of its evolution line, has really been missing this bench barrier effect that Shaman's going to provide with its Flower Curtain ability that just says prevent all damage done to your bench Pokemon without a rule box by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. And I think this is a neat twist on something like what we saw from Manaphy previously. Manaphy was arguably almost too good at what it did in just being able to protect literally everything on your bench. And now that we have, like, a lot of the rule box Pokemon are Terra Pokemon anyway, but notably not protecting things like Pheasantipity or Squawkabilly, and making sure that those cards that are intended to be liabilities on your bench remain liabilities and they remain accessible to your opponent, I think is really good game design. We also see that Shaman notably has 80 HP, so you cannot search it with a Buddy Poffin. Just good card, cool card, and I expect to see a lot of play.
I agree with all of that. Yeah, it's definitely good game design. All right, next one I'd say is Crustle. It is 150 HP stage 1 Pokemon. Always got a soft spot for Crustle. It's a Gen 5 guy that doesn't get a lot of love. But it has a really strong ability. It's Mysterious Stone House. It says prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX. So just another safeguard ability we see once again. And then optimally, I should mention Dwebble does have a really good colorless Ascension attack, which Ascension, similar to we've seen in the past, says search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon and put it onto this Pokemon to evolve it, then shuffle your deck. So definitely an opportunity to get Crustle out turn 1 if you go second, or turn 2 going second pretty quick. I think this could be something good. The attack's not that great. It just does 120 damage, but it does have this shred effect of not being affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So it can go through Cornerstone, which is nice. and it does hit for weakness on some stuff. So definitely could see a world where Crustle gets like thrown into a rogue deck, or even has a deck just featured around it itself. Yeah, I don't know. I think if there's ever a time where the main few decks in the format don't have an answer to a non like a don't have a good non rule box Pokemon attacking, or a non EX, I guess is the better way to phrase it. Crustle could have an opportunity to do pretty well.
Yeah, I just hate walls, man. Like
Yeah.
I don't think this card needed to be printed, but I know somebody out there enjoys this play pattern, and so I guess this will appeal to them. I think the thing also having an Ascension basic is kind of crazy, but
Yeah.
hopefully the Japan results are indicative of the strength of this card, and we will not see a ton of it because it's just abysmal to play against something where your opponent's entire game plan is, haha, you can't hit me.
Yeah, we've seen it before.
Yeah.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I guess if you do like this play style, there was like a quad Sigalith. There's been quad Hoopa decks.
Yep.
Just pretty abysmal to play
Or
against.
you
I
just, I
agree.
mean, you just look at the modern Walls decks, like the Melodic Farigiraf,
Yeah.
Cornerstone stuff, and while it hasn't been successful currently, there were times even earlier in this season where like the Noivern Cornerstone deck popped up at Baltimore, and the whole game plan was, oh, my opponent cannot hit me, so I'm going to win the game that way. And sometimes that can be a good enough plan.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this right now, I don't see a world where you play this over Mimikyu. Um, for the most part, as Mimikyu has a lower retreat cost, is a basic, and then has pretty much the same ability at this point. I guess the shred attack is nice, but yeah, I guess once Mimikyu rotates, this will be our main safeguarder. We have some other ones, I believe. We have like the Fergaraf. But
But
this one's
they're all just kind of like
just
toolboxy. I mean, the most
yeah,
direct comparisons for this card are, like you said, Mimikyu or the Aegis Slash from,
yeah,
I think it's Paradox Rift, has literally
yeah.
the same ability text. But that card's on a stage 2, so it's just quite significantly less accessible than this.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely one of those cards you just keep in the back of your mind,
For sure.
and
For sure.
it'll come back into play at some point
It'll
for
pop
sure.
up when you least expect it and you will not be
Yeah,
happy.
yeah. Coming to a League Cup or challenge near you.
Absolutely. Or just
Yeah, there,
just to ruin your ladder experience on TCG
dude,
Live.
for sure. I mean, that's the thing though. Like, if people aren't going to respect safeguard as an ability, like, there's definitely a world where somebody just takes advantage of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gonna make a brief pit stop on Team Rocket's Blipbug, not because the card is good, but because I think the card is funny. For a single colorless energy, Blipbug allows you to look at one of your opponent's face down prize cards. And it's just an effect that I don't know if I ever recall ever seeing that in the game before, but I think it's funny that it exists.
Yeah, I can't ever think of a scenario where this is relevant, but
No.
it's definitely like the game designers were just bored one day and wanted to throw in Blip Bug into this set. Because like, why does Team Rocket have a Blip Bug? Like, what is it doing in this photo? It's just like
He's stealing
looking through.
Pokeballs. I mean, I think the funny thing is you're trying to make Blipbug evil. Like he just
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I don't even know
uh,
what is a Blip Bug, like
it turns.
realistically.
It's like a caterpillar. I mean, it turns into Orbeetle,
Okay,
which is, I guess,
yeah,
some.
Orbeetle's smart. Yeah, I know that
I
one.
don't know what an Orbeetle is, like what kind of
Right.
insect it is, but it's like a supercomputer, I guess.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, Next relevant grass type though would be the Team Rocket's Tarantula and Team Rocket's Spidops.
Hmm.
So Tarantula, notably, a couple of pretty big break points on the card that are worth talking about. Just that it's one only has 50 HP, so it is very vulnerable to both Dragapult and Dusclops. And also for a single grass energy, can do 30 damage and one hit KO a Badoo if it does not have a Bravery Charm attached to it. So pretty interesting there. And of course, the Tarantula is necessary to get the Spidops into play. And so Spidops is a 130 HP stage 1 Pokemon with the charging up ability, which is identical to that Naganadel that John was just talking about. So once during your turn, you may attach a basic energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. And then for a grassland colorless, Rocket Rush does 30 damage for each of your Team Rocket Pokemon in play. So it's a pretty serviceable attack on
Yeah.
a one prize support Pokemon that would otherwise be sitting on your bench to kind of fuel energy into play. You can do some cool stuff with Energy Switch involving this card, but the big combo is going to be with the Mewtwo EX, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. And I think that there are definitely some matchups where Rocket Rush for 150 or 180 is just good enough to kind of get you through some obstacles that your Mewtwo may not want to hit into directly.
Yeah, and it's really good into just stuff that like a Mimikyu or something like that
Yeah,
doesn't have
exactly.
options. Like we just talked about safeguard. This is definitely a way to deal with something like that. And yeah, it hits for weakness against some of those bigger dark type Pokemon like Zoroark and Charizard.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely can reach for doing a lot of damage.
For sure.
Yeah. So we wanted to give a quick shout out to Arboliva EX. We didn't think it would see a lot of play, but it does have an interesting attack called Oiling Machine Gun or Oil Machine Gun. Sorry, I'm sure the English name will be very different than Machine Gun. But who knows? Maybe we'll have an interesting name. But the effect of it is choose one of your opponent's Pokemon 6 times and do 20 damage to it. You can choose the same Pokemon more than once. So just a spread attack. But I don't think we've ever seen one that's worded this way. Or if we have, I guess we have, but
Yeah,
definitely,
there's notably a Raichu and Expanded that does something
yeah,
like this, but it's not this easy to do. There's a lot more setup involved in that, and you have to like discard a bunch of lightning energy to do something. But
yeah.
just
So just for one grass, I think if this had more hit points and like was like if you could heal this like for one grass, that's a pretty good attack. If Shaman wasn't coming out in the same set, I'd maybe say that C play, but I don't know if I will see much from Arboliva. So
yeah,
I'm
it's
not don't call me an Arboliver. You know what I mean?
for sure. It's tough when you have something like this and you kind of compare it directly to Dragapult.
Yeah,
And even though Dragapult for one additional energy, you do instead of 120 damage, you're doing 260 damage, and you don't naturally have a weakness. Your opponent has to play Clefairy for that, and you get access to Dracloak. And it's
yeah,
just a
yeah.
it's a tough sell for our. I mean, I don't know. You'd have what I'm trying to think of the scenario where this card is really just broken, and it's really tough because if you look at if I split my oil machine gun shots between two Pokemon evenly, I do 60 damage to both of those Pokemon. And that breakpoint is just not quite enough to knock out two evolving basics on the same turn. Now
Right,
you
and
can get something like Halucha involved for sure, and take out two Ralts or two Dreepies or two Charmanders or what have you. But
but as a
then
stage two,
right,
it's really not easy to get that into play. And then like to get this turn two stage two out into play and the Halucha, and if you're playing against a Gardevoir at this format, they're definitely playing Shaman or it doesn't really quite work out a lot of the time, unfortunately. So,
right, yeah,
but
yeah,
definitely cool attack. Yeah, I just wanted to give it a quick shout out.
sure.
And we get into some of the more heat or heart of the um, set here in Team Rocket's Moltres EX.
Yep. And so Team Rocket's Moltres EX, 220 HP basic EX Pokemon with the Flame Screen attack for Fire Colorless, does 110 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 50 less damage from attack, so effectively becoming a 270 HP basic when you're undamaged, and being able to boost that with cards like Bravery Charm or Hero's Cape or what have you. You can really kind of tank your Moltres if that's something that you want to do. And then the more interesting attack on this card, though, for fire and 3 colorless is Evil Burn. You discard a Team Rocket's energy from this Pokemon, and if you do, you discard your opponent's active Pokemon and all attached cards. And so, just as a spoiler, I guess, the Team Rocket's energy is the only special energy in the set. It provides 2 energy cards at a given time and provides both Dark and Psychic simultaneously. And then a lot of these Team Rocket cards specifically interact with Team Rocket's energy as a card. So not only is it providing 2 of these colorless costs, but if you discard one of them, you just discard your opponent's active. You don't take the KO, but you get that Dragapult out of your opponent's active, and they have to suddenly set up a new attacker.
Yeah, definitely good against setup decks, or stuff that's like you don't have an answer for. You can definitely throw this in there. And we might break down a deck list from a Japanese tournament that we've already seen. This deck featured in, or this card featured in. But yeah, this was included in one of the Mewtwo lists from a couple of the Japanese tournaments. But yeah, I think it's just a good attack, like just a really strong attack effect. Pretty costly, which is a good balance. But yeah, pretty cool to see. Um, Hopefully we get to see more. I love the theming of Team Rockets. I think it's probably one of the coolest. Like, if you're gonna have owners Pokemon, definitely cool to see Team Rocket get some love. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And them being so expansive compared to some of the smaller pools of Pokemon that some of these other owners have access to is
Yeah.
definitely gives you more options as well.
Yeah, I mean, they made the whole Team Rocket set in Japan, so we're definitely seeing the dividends of that in this set.
Yep.
Um, Moving on to Ethan's Pokemon, though, we have the Ethan's Typhlosion line. Um, just Ethan Cyndaquil is a basic 70 hit point. Importantly, hits for 30 damage, and you discard an energy, so you're able to knock out a Badoo. I guess you're already hitting it for weakness, so it doesn't really make too much of a difference. But Ethan's Quilava is pretty strong. It has a strong ability, Adventure Bound. So once during your turn, you may search for Ethan's Adventure, which is a supporter. You reveal it, put it in your hand, and then you shuffle your deck. And that combos with Ethan's Typhlosion. For 1 fire, it does Buddy Blast. It does 40 plus 60 more damage for each Ethan's Adventure card in your discard pile. So you get to do potentially 280 for 1 fire if you're able to get 4 copies of that card into your discard pile. So could be relevant. I don't think we've seen a whole lot of results from Japan with this specific card, but definitely something interesting, and especially for pre-releases, seems pretty good.
Oh yeah, I mean, notably, Ethan's Typhlosion is one of the pre-release promos. Interestingly, the pre-release promos for this set don't have alt artwork; they're all just
Oh,
base set artwork with the Destined Rivals set stamp in the corner. But Ethan's Quilava as an engine for finding those Ethans, and I guess again, not to scroll all the way down to the card, but Ethan's Adventure has text that says search your deck for 3 in any combination of basic fire energy or Ethan's Pokemon. So getting 1 Ethan's Quilava allows you to get an Ethan's Adventure that allows you to set up a whole board of Quilava to go find other Ethan's Adventure, or you can find the fire energy to power your Typhlosion attack. And we have like some of the partners for Typhlosion that we have seen out of Japan are Goldengo, just because Ethan's Adventure can find 3 fire energy even under item lock and allow you to do 150 damage that way. And you also then have access to a 1 prizer in the form of Typhlosion to get around a 1 prizer that doesn't have an ability, notably. So you can get around Cornerstone, or 280 for 1 on a 1 prizer is just a big number. But
yeah,
we've also
for sure.
seen Typhlosion paired up with Victini from, I want to say it was Surging Sparks, but it might have been Prismatic Evolutions, that has the ability that allows your fire type evolution Pokemon to do an additional 10 damage, or maybe it's 20.
I think it's 10.
Okay, I know that there's a way. I think maybe it involves Defiance Band plus a Victini that you can get up to 1-hit KOing Dragapult with Typhlosion, and you could also use Black Belt to get to that threshold too. So just the card has the ability to be really good, but I think that the difficulty is going to come from being able to maintain your hand when your supporter for turn is kind of a search card, or that's kind of the crux of your deck is drawing or searching your deck for what you would want to do, and then not necessarily having the space to find and or play kind of those niche or tech supporters like Black Belt, or having time to Iono your opponent when you're busy trying to get these Ethan's Adventures into your discard pile. And then also notably really prone to prizing them, which can cause a lot of difficulty. This is one of the only decks that we've seen that it's not refresh ticket, but that other card that was just released in Journey Together that allows you to shuffle.
Reverse ticket? Reserve ticket.
Reserve ticket. Yes.
Yeah.
It's where you're able to shuffle your prizes into your deck and put the top X number of cards into your prize zone equal to the number of cards that you or put on the bottom, not shuffle in. And the risk you run there is if you still have Ethan's Adventures in your deck, you might just put them right back in your prizes. And so, but the problem is that card is so important that if you prize more than 1 copy of it, you're just not doing enough damage if Typhlosion is your main attacker. So you kind of are shoehorned into having to run that card.
Yeah, I could see that. But I mean, it could be good. Like if item lock still is dominating your area, and you're just saying, I just need a way to build up my board and do things. Ethan's Quilava will definitely help you with that, and then building into the adventure and all that stuff. So
For
that's
sure.
good. Also in Ethan's catalog of Pokemon, we have Ethan's Macargo, which evolves from Ethan's Slugma, which does have 80 HP, which is a bummer, but we're able to get it with Ethan's adventure, so it's not as relevant as potentially other stuff. Macargo, though, has a really good kind of attack and ability. Um, the ability is Melt and Flow. If this Pokemon has no energy attached, it has no retreat cost. And then the attack is Lava Burst. It's 70 times. You can discard up to 5 energy from this Pokemon, and it does 70 damage for each card you discarded this way. So capping at 350, which is definitely enough to really deal with any stage 2 in this format. Yeah, it's pretty strong, I'd say. And then the fact that if you discard all the energy, you're not stuck with this Pokemon as a liability in your
Yep.
active is pretty nice.
Absolutely.
And I will say, we're not going to talk about it now, but we do get Inferno Fandango and Embor in a new set coming out pretty soon. So I could see a world in which, granted it is a stage 1, so it might be a little harder to set up than some other stuff, but I'd say this would be a good option for that if you wanted to maybe think about that. Would be kind of cool. I don't know.
Well, the next card that we'll talk about kind of gives you
Yeah,
something
true.
to tide you over in that realm as
There
well.
you go.
And that would be Ethan's Ho-Oh EX, so notably also searchable with Ethan's Adventure. So fire type basic Pokemon, 230 HP, has the ability Golden Flame. It says once during your turn, you may attach up to 2 basic fire energy from your hand to one of your benched Ethan's Pokemon. So you can bounce back and forth between 2 Macargos while the Ho-Oh powers up whichever one is currently on the bench. Then you promote it to your active. If you have 2 Ho-Ohs, you can attach 4 energy in a given turn. So you could see something similar to kind of like Baxcalibur Chien Pao, only you put a pair of Ho-Ohs on your bench, you get your Macargos set up, you Superior for 4 energy, and you're doing 280 that way repeatedly.
Yeah.
Which, again, it seems like a lot of hoops to jump through when we just talked about how Typhlosion can do that same number. But, I guess the idea would be that Macargo could theoretically do that 350, which Typhlosion has a little bit harder of a time breaking through. The other interesting thing with Ho-Oh is that Golden Flame does not have to go to a fire type. So that Pinsir we talked about at the very beginning of the set review can also be powered up with Ho-Oh. And right now, unfortunately for Macargo, Ho-Oh hasn't seen the most play with Macargo itself. It's more so just been people trying to play these turbo Ho-Oh decks because Ho-Oh also has an attack for 4 fire energy, Shining Feather, does 160 damage, but you also heal 50 damage from each of your Pokemon. And that's a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
you know, you look at something like Frostless Monkey Dory and you just say, okay, good luck winning this game.
Yeah. Yeah, against decks that don't one shot you, you definitely have a lot of options to just tank and heal. So yeah, definitely something kind of a cool card. I mean, I like Ho a lot. He's a cool guy.
Sure.
So cool to see him get some love in 2025. So further down, I don't know. Blaziken is okay. I don't think it's all that good.
Well, real quick. First,
Okay,
notably for people who were fans of Blaziken that we did get in Journey together,
sure,
we have a better Torchic now, just
that's
because
fair.
it's 70 HP instead of 60. Also has Collect as an attack,
Mm-hmm.
and then this Blaziken. I mean, it does pair with that Blaziken. So kind of in the inverse
True.
of what we would have seen in the old school, like Ruby Sapphire Blaziken EX combo. We now have a one prize Blaziken that for Fire colorless has Inferno legs. You discard 2 energy from this Pokemon, and you do 120 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Now, like we've mentioned previously, it's unfortunate that this is also being released in the same set as Shaman, but
Yep.
if you Inferno legs, you discard 2 energy. Your Blaziken EX can get one of those energies back to Inferno legs again on a different turn. Oh, sorry, I did miss the fact. Inferno legs also does 120 damage to your opponent's active. So it's kind of like a souped up flame body cannon from that Ends
Mm-hmm.
Darmanitan. I guess the really awkward thing would be the fact that you're getting your engine Pokemon in the form of the Blaziken EX and your attacker kind of built out of the same evolution line, which while also being very powerful because you aren't playing multiple stage 2s and basics that you have to combo with, also kind of is a resource thing that you have to balance. But it's just
Yeah.
interesting to have the option. I like when they have these evolution lines where you have options on what you're evolving your basic into. and that when both of them are kind of viable final destinations for that basic, I think that it makes things a lot more interesting.
Yeah, it definitely feels like old school Pokemon for sure. That was a really popular thing when back in like EX Power Keepers and all that kind of era, right?
Yeah.
Like the Ruby and Sapphire era, right? But I will say the one thing about that era compared to this era is not a lot of stuff one shot in that
Oh, that's
era.
fair. That's fair.
So at this point, it's not all that hard to hit to 170 in one turn
No,
with a lot of Pokemon. We
that's
just
right.
talked about doing 350 for one. So in it being a stage 2 and your resources being taxed a little bit more, trying to set up multiple stage 2s from the same evolution line, it'll be really hard to keep chaining these guys. So that's why I'm not too sold on it, but it is a cool card. I'd almost want it to be like a, a Rockets Pokemon, because then you could do like a 4/4 of this, and then like
Oh, that would be
a
interesting.
different line of the previous other guy. So you know what I mean? We haven't really seen that quite come to fruition, but I feel
Sure.
like that's a missed opportunity. Maybe
No, that's a pretty cool idea.
we go back to Team Rocket with Team Rocket's Articuno. I think one of the better Team Rocket's cards in this set has the ability Resistance Veil. It says prevent all effects of attacks used by your opponent's Pokemon done to your basic Team Rocket's Pokemon. So this is really key when we're talking about the Mewtwo deck with the round Tarantula, or what
Yep.
is that's
Yeah,
what it is.
that's what a little
With
dude's
it
called.
with it having 50 hit points, this prevents it from getting one shot by Dusknors effectively.
Uh,
Um, or not Dusknors,
no,
sorry, Dragapults.
there you go. Yeah,
The secondary effect of the attack of Dragapult. So you would just run it for that.
yeah. And the attack, I mean, notably, like it is another attack that interacts with Team Rocket's energy, causing it to do
Yeah.
additional damage. But I don't think I've seen any deck that plays this card that plays water energy. So you
Mm-hmm.
should not ever be attacking with it, nor do I think it would be possible to.
That's fair.
Cynthia's Melodic is not worth talking about. Um,
No.
Another kind of meme or interesting deck, or like exploring the concept of two different Pokemon evolving from the same Pokemon. And Pokemon likes to do this with this Clamperl line in particular. Like normally the Huntail and Gorbis either do something very similar to each other but kind of diverging in opposite directions, or they combo together very well. And this is the case of the latter. So we have the Huntail first that has the Diver Catch ability. Whenever one of your water Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, you may put all basic water energy attached to the Pokemon into your hand instead of your discard pile. And that goes with Gorbis directly with its Crescendo Wave attack that does 30 damage for each water energy attached to this Pokemon. But before doing damage, you may attach any number of basic water energy from your hand to this Pokemon. So you get a Huntail hiding on your bench, you have a Gorbis up active, you Crescendo Wave, you dump a bunch of water energy onto it, you do a bunch of damage. The multiplier is not super great, so you really need to get up to 8, 9, or 10 at like 8, somewhere between 8 and 11 energy to be hitting kind of relevant breakpoints. I mean, technically, I guess 7 knocks out a Pheasantipity. That's still 7 waters on one Pokemon. But the interesting combo is that if that Gorbis gets knocked out by damage, your Diver Catch on your Huntail lets you put all those energies directly back into your hand, and before your opponent has a chance to interact with them via Iono or something, you can push another Gorbis active Crescendo Wave and immediately dump them all back down and swing again.
Yeah. This makes me wish we had the melodic that prevented your opponent from being able to disrupt your hand. That'd be really cool in this combo, because otherwise all your opponent has to do is just play Iono before they take a knockout. And I feel like, oh no, I guess it goes back to your hand.
Yeah, it
Never
goes
mind.
back to
What am
him
I
when you
talking
get
about?
knocked out.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh, that's pretty good actually. Maybe, yeah, this is kind of a cool meme. Yeah, okay. I'm coming around. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to try to just. I guess you can just boss Huntail, but like that's not
right,
dealing with Gorbis,
yeah,
so you
yeah.
don't really care.
So if you can keep your Clamperls alive and you have like one that stays as a
Yeah.
Clamperl to evolve into whichever Huntail or Gorbis you need to, the big downside then is that Hunt or Clamperl only has 60 HP, so it's Dragapult fodder or Dragapult food. But I mean, this is not going to be a tier 1 deck by any means. Just the fact that,
No.
like, I'm going to put my Gorbis up. 1, hope you don't have Dusknoir. 2, hope that it gets knocked out by damage specifically. And 3, hope that I could get 11 energy down to one hit KO your stage 2 EX.
Yeah.
It's just
definitely less intuitive, but I mean, it's still cool. I don't know. It's
yeah.
cool to see like something like this come up where, yeah, it could actually like I can see this like being featured on our regionals at some point and like the early rounds on day one or something like that.
Like
Definitely
this to me feels like the United
good meme
Wings of
fodder.
this set.
Yeah.
If unless that title belongs to the Misty Gyarados, I guess. But
Oh yeah.
one of those two. And fittingly, they're both within the water type, so
Yeah. This seems a
competing with
little
each
better
other.
than Gyarados,
Sure,
but yeah.
sure. What else we got? We got another
So
Rotom. So, like we said,
yep.
another type to add to that Gadget Show deck that somebody might be working on. This would be the next one. So, another callback card of sorts. We have the Satitan EX. And so, longtime players would remember the Primal Groudon EX from back in the Primal Clash era
Oh yeah.
that had an ancient trait that prevented it from being interacted with while it was on your bench. So, your opponent could not Lysander it up to your active, Lysander being the same text as boss. So, Satitan has the ability Snow Cover that whenever your opponent plays an item or supporter from their hand, prevent all effects of that card done to this Pokemon. So your opponent can't remove energies from Satitan. They cannot move it from the bench to the active. They cannot, do anything to it. Essentially, you can't even dangerous laser this guy for goodness sake. But and then for 3 waters and a colorless, Satitan has the Crush Press attack that does 140 damage, and you may discard a Stadium in play. If you do, this attack does 140 more damage. So again, that 280 number that's been coming up a lot with this set, but Satitan is able to do that as long as you can discard a stadium from play. It does not have to be your stadium. You can discard your opponent's stadium or yours. So you can play something like Satatel's got 100 HP, so you probably want to have Artisan and something like this. And so you put the Artisan down, you get your Satatal army set up, and then Satitan dumps that Artisan once you no longer need it and does 280. Knocks out anything that is kind of a stage 1 EX that isn't Satitan, notably, or lower. And
Yep.
just the big struggle for this would be just taking down those stage 2s, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you could run something. I guess you could. Yeah, I was about to say you could run like Gravity Mountain, but if you're discarding it, that doesn't really work as much.
Right.
Notably, you can run Heavy Baton with this. It does have 4
Oh, yeah.
retreat. So that's a nice additional thing to be able to pass the energy back to your benched Satitan. So, and especially, if we do get tool removal in the future, this will be immune from that. So that'll be nice. So it could be a nice rogue deck. 300 hit points on a stage 1 is a lot, especially when you can't bring it to the active and like start wailing on it. And if you can push it to the bench somehow, you can definitely keep it around a lot longer and heal it or something like that. So yeah, I think this is kind of a sleeper pick if I had to say. I don't think it'll get a lot of play, but it definitely is like more interesting than on first glance you might see.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and I guess notably, like going back to that Groudon, which was very similar in a lot of ways. Like we had a strong, like set of locking cards that kind of went with that as the front line, and with this to do a similar strategy, you'd be putting like Clef Keys up front, and I don't know if that really slows decks down the same way that something like the Wobbuffet did back in the day. So you'd be looking at. I mean, I guess notably, like you do have a colorless cost in your attack, so you could play Monkey Dory with this. Like 300 is still going to be difficult to knock out, so your damage threshold goes up to 310, maybe 340 if you can get 2 Monkey Dories in play.
And we do have Scramble Switch in this format.
Yeah.
So just saying. We did have that with Groudon. It was a really strong attack with that. Or a really strong ace-spec with that. So, this could be time to hit the button, Aaron.
Maybe. So Titan's got a lot of options like that. Like you said, the Hero's Cape could go on this. Have your 400 HP so Titan that cannot have the tool removed. Same thing, Max Belt lets you hit 330.
Yeah. So there's definitely some interesting ones.
I don't know. Again, I don't think that this card's particularly strong. We haven't really seen any results come out of it so far in any major tournaments or even city leagues. But I think that it's an interesting card. And at some point, maybe not right now, but I think at some point during its lifespan, this card will probably see play.
I think that's not unfair to say. I mean, it's especially if we get a good wall Pokemon to set this up behind, or like some easier ways to accelerate the water energy.
Yeah.
With like a supporter or something like that, or like an item that accelerates water to bench Pokemon. I could see that. Yeah, just the attack cost is a lot to set up.
Sure.
You can run like Crispin to like maybe cheat out an extra energy once or twice. If you're running Dark and Water potentially, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's really that easy to set up, and
No.
might not even be worth it at this point. But definitely something that could be a good feature on Ethan's Pichu. We finally have a Badoo counter for all the people that saying we need to ban Badoo. Here's your hard counter to Badoo, similar to how when we had Cleffa running amok back in the day, we had Tyrogue. Now we have Ethan's Pichu to save us from the big bad terrible Badoo. So Ethan's Pichu is a 30 hit point basic Pokemon with free retreat and has a, I don't know, you would call this colored out
Yeah, zero
energy
energy
cost.
attack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
zero energy attack for no energy. It does 30 damage and you draw a card. So all the people complaining about how Badoo's ruined the format, now you can stop talking and just play Ethan's Pichu in your deck and win every time versus Badoo. So
Well,
there
I
you
mean,
go.
to be fair, John, those people already had access to Elekid, and they were still complaining. So, I mean, I guess
Yeah,
now you can also do your Elekid and draw a card, but
yeah. There you go. You counter it entirely. You don't need to play items when you're drawing cards. So I don't need to hear. I don't want to hear about
sure, sure.
it.
The next kind of callback card. So this set has a ton of throwbacks to anyone who has played through several different eras. So we already talked about the like Titan be a callback to the Primal Groudon from the Primal Clash era or the Big EX era. Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, I guess is the best way to describe that. With them next up would be Team Rocket's Ampharos, which goes all the way back to the Team Rocket Returns set back in 2005, I believe, is when that came out.
I'm gonna
Maybe
take your word for
2004
it.
even. And
Hopefully the Plains quiz show is not asking me about Team Rocket's return. Otherwise, we're done.
so Team Rocket's Ampharos has the ability Darkest Impulse, and is kind of is this card is I think 1-to-1 with the original Dark Ampharos from Team Rocket Returns, but it's just power scaled or power crept to keep up with the times a little bit. So if you have Team Rocket's Ampharos in play, whenever your opponent plays a Pokemon from their hand to evolve one of their Pokemon during their turn, you put 4 damage counters on that Pokemon. And notably, the effect of Darkest Impulse doesn't stack. So even if you have 2 Ampharos in play, you will only be putting 4 counters on a Pokemon when it evolves. And the attack on Ampharos is not relevant. It does 140 damage for 3 energy. That's way too much for an attack that has no effect for that little damage. The big
Mm-hmm.
combo here is going to be with a fighting type that we'll talk about later, but in conjunction with TM Devolution, notably. So your opponent evolves, they put 4 damage counters on the Pokemon, you devolve them, they have to evolve again, they get 4 more counters, you devolve them again, and in a lot of instances, something like a Dreepy would then be knocked out. Or, if they had a lot of stage ones like Gimme Ghouls would be knocked out if a Goldengo had to evolve twice. And I think the fact that the other card that this combos with is Team Rocket's Tyranitar. So we're looking 2 different stage 2s we have to set up to get our full combo going. And neither of them is an engine that really supports the deck and keeps it consistent. I think that that's going to be kind of the downfall of this strategy, even though it's one that is kind of near and dear to my heart in particular. I loved the deck was called Rock Lock back in the day, and that gives me an idea. Maybe I'll talk about Rock Lock on next week's time capsule because I think that it's a really cool deck to feature. But the whole crux of that is that you're devolving your opponent's Pokemon constantly, forcing them to evolve. I think that the problem now is we have too many decks that either they just don't have to evolve everything, or these Pokemon are too vulnerable to maintain their status in play, and the combo just becomes too easy to disrupt to really put enough pressure on your opponent to close games out.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like a cool combo, but definitely one that might be a little bit more difficult to pull off.
Yeah.
In a faster format where stuff is just getting knocked out too fast for you to really set up 2 stage 2s.
Exactly. And then
that's really. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, you also have to get the Ampharos and stuff online before your opponent evolves their Pokemon,
Yeah.
or you're committing one of your TM devolutions just to try to start doing damage and hoping that that's enough to, set your opponent behind enough that you can really get everything going.
Yep.
And then we also, like, the other thing that this deck did not have to contend with back in the day is Monkey Dory. And he will continue to be a thorn in the side to anything that attempts to be doing this long-term kind of chip damage sort of strategy.
That's a good point. Yeah, your opponent can just move that damage back over to your side of the field.
Right.
We have Zeraora, which seems pretty good for like GLC. Actually, not GLC. It says the Pokemon EX. All right. So for 3 lightning, it says discard all energy from this Pokemon that's attacked does 210 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon EX. So like a Pheasantipity counter, perhaps for
Yeah.
some decks. Maybe once we get the what is it called?
The electric.
Electric back.
Yeah.
Yeah, this will definitely be something worth playing.
Absolutely. This card will be broken once we have Dynamotor.
Yeah.
Well, broken's probably a strong word, but it'll be significantly stronger than having to rely on Joltik or Electric Generator to power it up.
For sure.
And so yeah, that's going to close out the lightning types, and that'll close out the front half of our set review. So we're going to take a quick pit stop here and jump over to Blaine's quiz show. And so this week it is my turn to ask John some questions. Currently the scores are set at myself with 26 points and John with 20 points. And John, I was feeling like it's a little weird to just go back and forth tossing 3 points this way and that way. And so I've updated the rules ever so slightly for this week. And so, as is normal, we will have 3 multiple choice questions. Each correct answer will be worth 1 point, and you have 1 hint available that you may exercise at any time. However, if you can answer all 3 questions correctly without utilizing the hint, you will earn an additional point for the week. And I don't know, this is something I wanted to test out. I think that it adds a little bit of a dynamic, maybe a little bit of tension instead of, we've had it several weeks where whoever is answering questions just waits till question 3 to use the hint. And it kind of makes the hint seem like a little bit of a waste, especially if that question is something that the person already knows anyway or has a good idea of the answer. And so if you're really confident on whatever the topic is or the questions that come up, you have the chance to earn yourself 1 extra bonus point throughout the week. And so with the scores currently at 20 to 26, you have the chance to get up to 24 points this week.
I know you're pitching this as like a way for me to catch up, but all I can really think about is how much more you're going to be able to take advantage of this more than I am. So I will happily participate, but I will just make that known now. So like 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, when you've ballooned the lead up to like 18 or something like that, we can look back at this and laugh.
Fine. Well, in keeping with that, the topic for this week is just miscellaneous. There is no given theme to any of these questions, but I believe that you are well within your capabilities of getting 4 points this week.
Let's go. Let's try.
And so for our first question, John Ang won Portland Regionals last season with Lost Tina. But what I want to know is what deck was his opponent playing in the finals? Was it Lost Box, Mew Genesect, Lost Tina, or Charizard?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think it was Lost Box. I don't remember at all. Is it Lost Box? Is that why you're laughing?
No, I'm just laughing because you said you don't remember.
I notably I just don't remember much. Like one ear out the other. A lot of Pokemon stuff. I'm going to just use my hint because I don't think I'm going to get any closer to this, but I think I can get there.
Okay. So the deck that is the answer to this question is a Lost Zone deck.
Okay. So it's either the mirror or a Lost Box. Was it a mirror? Now that I've said it and you laughed, I'm just going to say Lost Box is my answer.
Well, see, now I feel bad because I influenced your answer because it was, in fact, a Lost Tina mirror in the finals. And kind of an interesting fact, does not come up in the rest of these questions. Portland, I believe it is now 2 seasons in a row, has had a mirror match in the finals. And so that would be something that I'd be interested in seeing keep up as we continue into this season. And has a strong possibility with decks like Dragapult and Gardevoir hanging around.
Sure.
So moving on to question 2. Which player is currently listed as the most successful Dragapult player based on Limitless points? Your options are Justin T, Nathan O, Andrew Hedrick, or Vinny Fernandez.
It's definitely a senior. Because Omar was like 3rd based on Limitless points. With
Dragapult specifically?
Yeah.
Okay.
With Dragapult. At one point, I don't know if he still is, but yeah, like earlier on in the season. I want to say Justin Templar because he's like won 2 regionals with it, so I definitely want to go with Justin Templar here.
And you are absolutely correct. So Justin is currently sitting at 102 limitless points. Nathan has 86, Andrew Hedrick at 66, and Vinny Fernandez at 50. There were a couple of other players that were actually above Vinny, but I wanted to include him as an option just because he is such a strong and notable player. But
Sure.
Justin, Nathan, and Andrew are the top 3, I believe, currently.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to our last question. In the Journey Together format, which deck has earned the most money from tournaments in the Masters division so far? And your choices are Gardevoir, Dragapult Dusknoir, Raging Bolt, or straight Dragapult.
Oh, this is tough because Gardevoir definitely is like finished in first in the most events in the Journey Together format. But it definitely was like not the most represented deck in all of like day 2 money caches.
Yeah.
Raging Bolt's up there. So I really think it's just a choice between the Dragapult variants. And this is like so close. Dude, I don't know. I think is it better than Gardevoir? Maybe. It could be Raging Bolt, honestly, which would be wild, but this is a hard question. All right, I think I'm gonna go straight Dragapult just because it's had better finishes. It might just be slightly better than Dragapult Dusknoir. Man, that might just make my Dragapult bias showing.
Locking it
But
in?
straight Dragapult. Yep, locking it in.
And you are absolutely correct.
Ooh.
So straight Dragapult is number 1 with $44,000 earned, specifically in the Journey Together format. Things get a little bit weird if you kind of allow Limitless to toggle for full format.
Right.
But just in this format, straight Dragapult has earned $44,000. Oh, sorry. Notably, this was only in the Masters division. I
Okay, great.
believe
Yeah,
I read that when
also...
I read the initial question, but it doesn't change the numbers very much. Straight Dragapult stays number 1 in both of those categories, but the like second and third place shift a little bit. So currently, Straight Dragapult has earned $44,000. Gardevoir has earned $39,000. Dragapult Dusknoir has earned $31,000, and Raging Bolt, the lowest on the totem pole, but still a respectable $20,000. I think it's a little funny because that includes a regional win.
Yeah, so, half of that is a regional win. Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll close out Blaine's quiz show for this week. So, John, you did answer 2 questions correctly. So we'll close the week out at 22 to 26. So I'll once again say thank you for playing, and we will come back next week to see how our scores change.
I'm happy with it. 2 out of 3. I think you were making me throw with the first question, so it's fine.
I was not trying to. I totally that was a complete accident.
I'm giving you a hard time.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness.
Now we can. You're good at poker, I bet, where you're just like, oh, I have such a bad hand.
I don't know. You can talk to some. Like, I haven't played poker since college, but
okay.
You could talk to some of the people I used to play poker with, and they'd probably say that I'm pretty bad.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's weird. I think that I actually get better playing with specific people the longer I play with them. One, because I think I'm pretty good at picking up on other people's tells and habits, and I think it becomes easier for me to like mask what I'm trying to if I need to. I don't know, something like that. So yeah, so now we can jump back into our set list and pick things back up with our psychic types. And so another callback here, Team Rocket's Hypno is a callback to Dark Hypno from Team Rocket Returns. Not going to talk about it because it's a bad card, but just if you can look at those 2 cards, and they're very similar to each other. But the first psychic type of note is Team Rocket's Mewtwo EX. So a 280 HP basic Pokemon.
Massive.
With the Power Saver ability, which reads, this Pokemon cannot attack unless you have 4 or more Team Rocket's Pokemon in play. And the Eraser Ball attack, which I believe has been translated in English to Deletion Sphere.
Okay.
I think is the official name of the attack. But for 2 Psychic and a Colorless, does 160 base damage, and you may discard up to 2 energy from your bench Pokemon. This attack does 60 more damage for each card discarded in this way. So again, if you discard this 2 energy, you hit that 280 number that this set is really trying to hammer home, which I guess is a very important number if Mewtwo is going to be an important card in the format.
Yeah, definitely the big bad of the set, the poster child, if you will. The ability seems pretty prohibitive in a lot of ways, but it doesn't really. We'll get into it a little bit more. It's not as damaging as it might seem to be in the first glance.
Sure. Well, I mean, you figure if you have, like, this goes back to the Spidops that combos with this card really well. So kind of like the Blacephalon Naganadel you talked about in Time Castle, we have Mewtwo Spidops. I get my 2 energy that I siphon back with Spidops. Mewtwo discards them. I get them back with Spidops. Mewtwo discards them. So if I have 2 Spidops and a backup Mewtwo on my bench, my Mewtwo can attack and it's fine. There's no problem. So I don't think that it's
Yeah.
super crazy. It's not a crazy threshold to get over. And we've seen abilities like this in the past with like Team Magma's Groudon as an example, and they're never super prohibitive. The ability is not the reason that the card is not successful.
That's fair. Yeah, I can see a world where, yeah, I mean, I guess that's not the biggest thing. The biggest thing I could see is just powering it up continuously. And then, yeah, the 280 cap is not too bad for 3 energy and then 2 on the bench, but it definitely is like, I mean, it feels okay. It feels very fair. It doesn't feel like completely broken like a Raging Bolt somewhat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It's like, because it's not limitless in its ability to do damage, I could definitely see a world where this may just fall by the wayside. And that's where, like, we haven't seen the most success with this card in Japan so far. I mean, Tord took it to the most recent Champions League, and I believe that he went X3 and didn't actually make it into day 2. And one of the kind of prohibitive things, and we'll get into this, so Team Rocket has a whole trainer engine associated with it. Is something we can kind of preview before we get into the full trainer section. But one of the caveats associated with a lot of these stronger trainers are that they only interact with your board or your hand in a positive way if your whole deck is Team Rocket's Pokemon, essentially. And the problem with that is that Team Rocket does not have an onboard draw engine to really keep your deck going. And so it just makes things really awkward if you ever want to like put a Clefairy on your bench or put a Pheasantipity on your bench or put a Squawkabilly on your bench to just kind of catapult yourself into the game. All of a sudden you're locked out of a bunch of extremely powerful cards, or you're diminishing the returns that those extremely powerful cards can provide to you.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely, I mean, like even running like Pheasantipity can be prohibitive if you're trying to play some of those other supporters and trainers and such. Moving down the list, we're going to mention Team Rocket's Wobbuffet for a psychic and a colorless, so nicely fulfilled by that rocket energy we talked about. It has Rocket Mirror. It says move all damage counters from one of your benched Team Rocket's Pokemon to your opponent's active Pokemon. So I think that's a kind of cool attack. We haven't really seen too much. It reminds me of, there was a Mewtwo, Mega Mewtwo, that allowed you to move like damage swaps, which is the damage from your active with your opponent's active. But this is a little bit different. I think it's okay. Like, I don't think it's gonna win you a whole bunch of games, but it could be good. You know, if you can attach your Rocket's energy, retreat your Mewtwo, use Wobbuffet to just knock out something, and then have a 1 prize on the active, and then have the Mewtwo powered up or on the bench with no damage counters on it.
Yeah,
that seems pretty good. So I don't know. There's definitely some potential there.
Yeah, and Mewtwo has an extremely large HP pool to work with, so definitely a possibility. And that can be further expanded again with Bravery Charm, with something like, I don't know. Heroes Cape's a bit of a stretch. I think that there are other A-specs that fit a bit more easily or reasonably into the deck, like Max Belt or Prime Catcher or something. But, you know, there will be easy ways to have access to the Wobbuffet that will become more apparent when we talk about some of the other Rockets cards, including specifically the trainer section.
Yeah.
Next up, we get our first look at some Steven's Pokemon, and they are bad. So we can keep going. The first one that's worth talking about for Steven is Steven's Carbink. So Psychic type basic with the ability Stone Palace. It says as long as this Pokemon is on your bench, each of your Steven's Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. The effect of Stone Palace does not stack. And so this all is going to kind of build up to the fact that Steven's marquee card is, of course, Steven's Metagross EX. And the whole strategy for Steven seems to be keep Metagross alive. And unfortunately, like, Carbink is probably, it's a really good card in the sense that you have a basic that sits on your bench that's somewhat difficult to interact with. It's not like, you know, Full Metal Lab as an example, where your opponent can just play a stadium and remove it. You know, if they want to take the Carbink out of commission, they have to KO the Carbink. and otherwise it sits there and repeatedly reduces the damage that your Stevens Pokemon take. But I think the problem comes from the fact that the archetype as a whole is a little bit too weak to really see the fruits of this card being successful.
Yeah, we'll showcase Metagross a little bit, but yeah, definitely a little more underwhelming when we talk about owners Pokemon. Beneath that is Team Rocket's Mimikyu. It has another 2 energy psychic and colorless attack, gem mimicry. It says choose an attack on your opponent's active Terra Pokemon and use it as the effect of this attack. So similar to some other Mimikyus we've seen in the past, this has like a copycat attack, but it's specific to um, Terra Pokemon.
Yep.
It is nice that you get to just choose one of your opponent's active attacks, so you're not bound to whatever they used on the opponent's last turn. You can boss something up and then just copy that attack. So if they have a Wellspring Ogerpon, you can just use this attack, discard the energy. I think it says shuffle 2 water in, so I don't know if you can get the secondary
It just says
effect from
shuffle
that.
3 energy in, actually.
Oh, okay. So yeah, definitely you can still use this for the secondary effect of 100 and 120. So yeah, definitely some cool combos you can pull. Has free retreat as well, which is relevant. So definitely something that's nice as a pivot option. So yeah, and then I guess we talked about Blipbub. Here we go. Here's Dottler.
Wait, real quick on the Mimikyu before we leave it.
Sorry, I got a little excited.
I do. The card one fits really well with the kind of Spidops Mewtwo deck as a whole because you are already running that Team Rocket energy. But the big thing I think is that this card slots immediately and very easily into Gardevoir, which is a little ridiculous almost in the fact that one of the most powerful things we've seen for Gardevoir in the Dragapult matchup specifically is using genome hacking with the Clefairy on your bench and moving damage counters over to KO a Dragapult and a Dracloak in the same turn. And now you're telling me I can do that with a one prizer?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, that seems pretty abusive. Truthfully, Guardy's just getting stronger. And Guardy now fans are just living good.
Now, Mimikyu only has 60 HP, so if your opponent is able to put a Phantom Dive together and get your Mimikyu back to the bench, they can take it out pretty easily. If you're playing the Rockets deck, though, if you have that Articuno in play, your Mimikyu can't be interacted with from Dragapult's Phantom Dive, and you're totally safe. So I think that, again, interesting game design where it's better in some decks in some ways and better in other decks in other ways. And I don't know, just an interesting card, even though this effect seems extremely powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Very good effective attack. And we've seen this kind of pop up from time to time in other formats.
Sure.
But
now you can gush over Dottler.
Sorry. So I do want to say something. Cutler Radar is the first attack for 1 colorless. It says look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck and put them back in any order. So there is the option for maybe a control deck to use this. It's a colorless, just 1 colorless. So you could run it with just like a Pidgeot control in theory. So there, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying like if we ever get to a point where there's a deck where you can just discard your opponent's entire hand, then you can just keep using Dottler to adjust their deck and kind of basically lock them out of the game. Essentially, if you can, keep using this attack over and over again. I don't know. I don't think it's gonna go crazy, but it definitely seems like it could be something relevant.
I think it's a stretch, but notably the Dottler does evolve into Team Rocket's Orbeetle, which is another interesting card in that it has the Rocket Brain ability. So as often as you like during your turn, you may move 1 damage counter from one of your Team Rocket's Pokemon to another of your Pokemon, and it does have Psychic. So for Psychic and 2 colorless, you do 40 plus 40 for each energy attached to your opponent's active. The attack is pretty pointless. It's just kind of there so the card can have an attack. And the real draw for this card would be if you wanted to access that Rocket Brain ability. But I'm not really sure what this fits into unless you're trying to do something where, like, I guess you're countering spread strategies and then you can kind of concentrate all of the damage onto one Pokemon on your bench for Wobbuffet to move over.
Yeah.
But it seems like a lot of work, like getting a stage 2 set up to try to accommodate something like that. I just don't know if this card has it in it to see play.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I wish if it was like just move Pokemon energy damage from one of your Pokemon to another Pokemon, this would definitely see play. But it being bound to Team Rockets, it does allow you to move it off of Team Rockets to another of your Pokemon. So
Yeah.
there is a world where there's a Pokemon that you can shuffle back into your deck and just
No, that's fair.
you know like a Pidgeot V we've seen in the past. So if there's an opportunity for that, we have that kind of going for it. So definitely there's some play with that if you wanted to think about it from that perspective. But yeah, definitely. Like I know you were shooting down my Dottler. I don't see Orbeetle seeing much played from the
No,
jump,
no. Blipbug
but
though. He's got
yeah,
potential.
Blipbug. I mean, he's definitely scheming with those Pokeballs, man. I don't trust that guy. He's pretty shifty. Pretty shifty. Um, my brother will be happy that there's a Sudowoodo in this set. I don't think it's very good.
Whoa.
Oh, it's
I'm gonna
okay.
I'm gonna hard disagree with
Okay,
you on
all
this
right.
one.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So anyone who enjoyed Knackley, you now have a better Knackley.
Oh, okay.
So it's one retreat cost, 110 HP. I guess technically it's worse in some ways because you can't potion for it, but you have impound, which I'm almost certain is going to be translated as corner, but I guess maybe it might still be impound. One fighting for 20 damage or during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon cannot retreat. But
I didn't
additionally,
read that. Sorry.
you do also have two colorless for attempt mimicry. That's flip a coin. If heads, choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. That's kind of a last ditch. Like, I need to win the game this turn. Let me flip a coin and go for it. But I do think that the corner option is actually pretty interesting with this card.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before with the Knackley and all that. So
Yeah.
this definitely continues that strategy. And yeah, if you hit this into something with resistance, you're doing 0 damage, so you're able to just indefinitely lock up
Yep.
something like a Mimikyu or like a Monkey
Latias
Dory.
beware.
Yep. So definitely something to think about. We get into Team Rocket's Tyranitar line. So we definitely have some play with Explosive Awakening on the Pupitar. It does 30 damage, and then search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon and put it onto this Pokemon to evolve it. So just a way to boost into the T-Tar, which has a really strong ability in Sand Stream. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, you put 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's basic Pokemon during Pokemon's checkup. The attack is pretty bad, I think.
Yeah,
Fighting
it's just
color,
hard to power up.
180. Yeah.
Like, you can reversal it into existence when you're behind, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's just not. I mean, but the ability is pretty strong. I wish it like it being having to be in the active is a bummer because you don't really want a 3 retreat, pretty bad attack in the active.
No,
But
well,
the ability is really strong.
yeah, I mean, this goes back. So again, Rocklock, you want
Yep.
Ampharos and Tyranitar in conjunction with each other. And so you're devolving all of your opponent's Pokemon with TM Devolution. So they're all basics again with the Tyranitar using that attack. So they get the 4 counters when they evolve. You devolve them. They take everything takes 20. Anything that was rare candied up is probably not evolving again immediately. Or if they just evolve into a stage 1, suddenly they're up to 100 damage total. And when you devolve them, they will certainly be knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
The neat thing for this card, though, in particular, is that you can actually Salvatore the Larvitar into the Pupitar on turn 1 and use Explosive Awakening to get a Tyranitar active on turn 1 going second.
That's kind of fun.
Which is pretty neat. I don't know. Maybe there's a world where there's just like a Turbo T-Tar deck and you just ignore the Ampharos completely.
Yeah.
You just focus on, again, still just a full TM Devo and spread 20, spread 20, spread 20. Again, Monkey Dory probably kind of just mutilates this strategy as an option.
Yeah.
But
if there was a way to recover tools and
like if Roseanne's backup was still legal,
yeah, or something like Eco Arm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where you're able to shuffle them back into your deck. Something a little bit better than Roseanne's would be nice. Because yeah, just that's one thing with Rocklock. I think the TM stayed on the Pokemon, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, once you used it, it was
discarded?
gone. Yeah.
Oh, my bad. Okay. So I guess it's a similar principle then. But
Things just have
yeah,
way more HP now.
I don't know. I think it's a cool like proof of concept, but it would be hard to like see actually be executed.
No, it's a nostalgia thing more than anything.
Fair.
But I will almost certainly be putting it together because it will be very cheap to build.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And notably, if things that we've seen kind of with the like Roaring Moon to Dunsparce deck recently are any indication, you could play Neutralization Zone
Yeah,
and just hope that it sticks.
yeah, you might be able to cheese some wins for sure on the ladder. So that's definitely an option.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Moving forward.
I don't think Metacham's very good.
No, Regirocky X is not very good either.
Nah, just another 180
So next thing
attack.
would be
Finally,
we've got the Cynthia's Garchomp line would be the next thing up, I think. So Gibble, 70 HP, you can Poffin for it. Super great. But Gibble evolves into Cynthia's Gabite, 100 HP stage 1 that has the King's Call ability. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for a Cynthia's Pokemon, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your deck. So again, this goes right back to Fluffy Chomp. You had the Dragon Call Gabite back then, did basically the same thing. It was just search your deck for a Dragon Pokemon. So you evolve one Gabite, it finds another Gabite, that finds another Gabite, that goes and finds insert other Cynthia Pokemon. And then on your next turn, you search for 3 Cynthia's Pokemon, and you're probably getting a Garchomp, a Roserade, maybe a second Roserade, maybe a second Garchomp. Just getting something set up, and your whole board gets set up immediately without having to really search your deck with a bunch of Ultra Balls and kind of weighing things down in that way. And then Cynthia's Garchomp EX, 330 HP, stage 2 fighting type. It has the Spiral Dive attack for 1 fighting, does 100 damage, and you may draw till you have 6 cards in your hand. And for 2 fighting, Dragon Buster does 260, and you discard all energy from this Pokemon. So, notably, again, these damage numbers might seem a little low for a stage 2, except for the fact that the Roserade that is meant to combo with this is boosting each of them by 30 for each Roserade that you have on your bench. So Spiral Dive does 100 or 130 or 160. Dragon Buster can do up to 320 for 2 fighting. And then you do discard your energy, but you could play something like Power Glass with this and just go 260 or up to 320 every single turn.
Yeah.
Card has potential.
Yeah, you get some other items that we'll talk about in a little bit. Yeah, I think it looks good. It being a setup deck, especially like you're relying on a stage 1 to help out your stage 2. It's going to be tough, Aaron. Like Fluffy Chomp, if you remember, I'm sure you do.
Yep, fell flat on its face.
Super hyped. One of the most hyped decks I think I've ever experienced. And then did absolutely nothing once it got into play.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was wary of saying the deck was good, but it seems like it should be. It seems like it should be.
I mean, maybe. I mean, it's definitely one that's easy to put together and play, and people love Cynthia, so it'll get some play. It'll be like Hop Station at least, where people will want to try it out, and we'll see it. We'll see it for the first few weeks of the format for sure. Whether it sticks around past that will probably be dependent upon how much it actually succeeds from there.
Right. Oh, I forgot. Arven has Pokemon in this set as well. So if Misty's gimmick was being bad, Arven is exactly the same. No, but realistically, Arven's gimmick is that he feeds his guys sandwiches and he heals them and keeps them around. That just, unfortunately, is not very good. The Toadschool and Toadscroll are not worth talking about at all. No. The next card of note, I think, and a card that I like on reveal was particularly interested in, I've kind of cooled on the card a little bit since then, is Team Rocket's Arbok. So stage 1 dark type, 130 HP, has the intimidating glare ability. It says if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your opponent can't play any Pokemon that have abilities from their hand except for Team Rocket's Pokemon. And then for the attack, for 3 dark, it does 30 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. That's not really super relevant. The bigger thing is just that you have the ability to stick something in your active that says, you can't play your Dracloak, you can't play your Goldengo, you can't play your Pidgeot, you can't play your Charizard. So unless you can get around this Arbok, you can't. Your deck doesn't function in a lot of circumstances.
Yeah. And it could be good like early game. If you can get set up, early, it can definitely slow your opponent down effectively. I don't know how much it is besides a deterrent. You know, the
Right.
attack's not very good. Um, Spinning Tail for 3 dark, it does 30 to each of your opponent's Pokemon. So, you know, a spread attack, which is fun, but definitely like less impactful with Terra Pokemon in play and, you know, the return of Shaman now. I mean, potentially your opponent might not be able to get the Shaman down turn 1, so you could prevent that from getting to play. There are ways to cheat out Pokemon too, with Nest Ball particularly.
Yep. Nest Ball, TM
TM
Evolution.
Evo,
Mm-hmm.
yep, TM Evo, and then yeah, so definitely in a different format, I think this would be really, really strong. Especially one without Gust to like move it out of the active.
Sure.
But I think there's just too many ways to get around it right now.
That's
So
fair.
not to throw a wet blanket on your snake over
No,
here.
no, no. Um, let's see. Unfortunately, I don't think that the Nido Queen or Nido King are particularly good.
No, unfortunately.
Um,
The Golbat though.
Tell me about Golbat, John.
Oh yeah. So I played Toadbats a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I was the degenerate player that loved announcing Quaking Punch 85 times in a game and watching my opponent just slowly pull their hair out. So this definitely brings a lot of memories back for me, and it's a very similar reprint to a Crobat line we had in the EX era, capital EX era. So Team Rocket's Zubat is pretty weak. Yeah, I don't think it's very good.
No.
I wish it had free retreat, if anything. But yeah, we're bound with a 50 HP guy. But the Golbat, notably, is a lot better. It has the ability Sneaky Bite, which is the exact same ability as the Golbat from, I think, Phantom Forces, was
Yep.
it? Yep. Back in the day. It says when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's not too bad. And then from there, you can evolve it into Crobat EX, which has 310 hit points. Dark type Pokemon has the ability Bite About. It says when you play this Pokemon from your hand, evolve one of your Pokemon to your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. So I think it's a little bit, it's different. The Crobat from Phantom Forces put 3 damage counters on one Pokemon. So this could be arguably worse in some ways, but it has a nice attack to pair with this. It's got for 2 dark, so definitely fulfilled by the Rocket's energy. It has Assassin's Return, does 120 damage, and you may put this Pokemon into your hand. So you're able to pop this right back in your hand and then start placing more damage counters. So this would be something you could do with like a safeguard attacker or a wall, like a walls deck. I could definitely see this being paired with. So definitely, or like Badoo, and then building this up around Badoo early game, and then you pivot into something else. So I don't know how much play this will see, but it definitely, like for you, you know, talking about Rock Lock, I definitely felt a little nostalgic looking at the Crobat line here for sure.
Sure. Sure. No, I love this card. I'm not super positive about how strong it is. I know it's super weird because it's hard to look at the Japanese results and really have any idea of how they're going
Yeah.
to be similar to or dissimilar from whatever we're going to experience, especially given the fact that they have access to a Psyduck gym promo that it essentially the ability shuts off Dusknoir. It says any ability that would knock out a Pokemon cannot be used. And because we don't have that card being released in this set, our format's going to be entirely different. But purely because of the existence of Psyduck, we've seen the evolution of decks like Dragapult to exclude Dusknoir in some instances and instead include a Crobat line as the way to kind of help accentuate the damage spread abilities of Dragapult in particular. But it's just at some point this card has to be good, right? Just plopping extra damage into play, especially and Crobat itself isn't really a liability. Like, yes, it is a 2-prizer, but it's got 310 HP. Like, that's not
Yeah.
easy pickings by any means.
No, no. And, you know, the 1 retreat is pretty manageable.
Right.
Lightning weakness isn't super relevant right now. So definitely Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Zero Aura. Definitely, like that can only hit bench Pokemon, so I don't think it's super relevant
Right.
in this matchup. So yeah, I don't see a world where this is like never played. I can imagine like you just have a deck where your opponent can't do anything, like you're paralyzing something in the active or
Yeah.
figuring that out and using Crobats around that. I don't know. I feel like there's got to be something that somebody comes up with at some point.
Yeah,
I'm hopeful.
exactly.
I'm feeling it. I want to be a degen again. Just quaking
Let's
punch.
continuing down. Last couple of Team Rocket's Pokemon to look at here. We have Team Rocket's Murkrow that just says search your deck for a supporter card, put it into your hand for a colorless. Not super great, but I guess it's something that you can nest ball for that can kind of get you out of a jam if you don't have a supporter. And Team Rocket's Sneasel is kind of a natural pairing with that Crobat line with its backstab attack for 2 dark. So again, Team Rocket Energy fulfills this cost. Does 20 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon for each damage counter already on that Pokemon. So as you stack up damage on your opponent's bench, you can suddenly hit something for twice as much damage as what they already have on them.
Yeah.
Not super like it's not gonna win tons of games by itself, but I think I could see a world where if you did have this kind of spread oriented strategy, this is a pretty easy slot in kind of finisher, if you will, for that.
Yeah. Could be good. Um, Something to keep in mind for sure. Like
Yeah.
that's the nice thing with all of these Rockets Pokemon, since you have Team Rocket's energy. So all the psychic and dark ones that take 2 energy types or take 2 energy, you pretty splashable, right? Like you can mix and match
Yep.
effectively
Yep.
for the meta or for whatever your strategy is. Real quick, we had Cynthia's Spiritomb. We talked about this in an earlier video game as a quiz, Blaine's quiz show question that I got wrong, but then Aaron realized he asked it wrong, so I got it right. Um, for 1 colorless, it does Raging Curse. It does 10 damage times the for each 10 damage for each damage counter on your bench Cynthia's Pokemon. It's not affected by weakness. Um, I don't think it's super good, but
No.
it could be one of those like you catch your opponent by surprise, pull this out, and have like a really good one prizer doing a lot of damage. So there's that.
Yeah, that's fair. Next up would be the series of Marnie's Pokemon, which are all dark types, but the only one that's really worth talking about is the Marnie's Grimmsnarl EX. And it has the Punk Up ability that when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may search your deck for up to 5 basic dark energy and attach them to your Marnie's Pokemon in any way you like. And then for 2 dark, it has the Shadow Bullet attack that does 180 damage and also does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And the way that this card is being used currently, it's not like a straight Marnie's deck. Like the pairing that this is intended for is the Marnie's Morpeko that does an extra 40 damage for each dark energy attached to it. So you're supposed to get this Grimmsnarl out, power up this Morpeko with 5 energy, and suddenly do a whole bunch of damage on a one prizer. But the way that this is seeing play instead is kind of as an alternate attacker or just an addition to the Frostlass Monkey Dory archetype that we've seen. So you want the dark energy in that deck already because of Monkey Dory. You have this kind of spread-based attacker. And if you're only doing 180 damage with the Shadow Bullet, you really need that supplemental damage from both some combination of Frostless and or Monkey Dory to really kind of get you over the line against a lot of decks. But when you combine all of those things together, it's kind of a pretty natural marriage of these cards, and they mesh really well together, and they've been seeing some pretty strong success so far.
Yeah, it's interesting that how effective it's working. Maybe frustratingly so for some people. I don't know about you, Aaron. I definitely feel weird about Marnie, like Grimmsnarl. I don't think it's probably one of my least favorite Pokemon.
Oh, it's ugly as sin.
From a design standpoint. Yeah, every time I see it, I'm like, who, what, why? It just it's weird that like, and it's especially like Marnie's such a cool character, and Morpeko's cool, and then you just like get Grimmsnarl, and you're like, whoa, okay, turn my TV off. Let me go do somewhere else. I don't know. I don't feel
Sure.
safe looking at it.
Okay. I mean, I guess we can move on from it then, if you want.
Yeah,
But
I've already scrolled
definitely
away.
definitely a strong card. I think that the Marnie's battle deck comes with 2 copies of it. and that's probably all you're going to need for the deck. So I would definitely pick one of those up. Should be pretty easy to get your hands on if that's something that you're interested in playing.
Yeah. Maybe just put like a little sticky note over his face, so
Sure,
you don't have to look at it every time.
sure. Then Arvin again, just not worth talking about.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think we're going to skip right over it. The next thing would be again that Stevens Metagross. We talked about the Carbink being able to reduce damage done to this thing. It's got 340 base HP, so with the Carbink, you get an effective 370, and there's a Steven Stadium that does the same thing as Carbink, so you can get up to an effective 400 HP. And Metagross's ability is notably really good. So once during your turn, you may search your deck for a basic Psychic and a basic Metal Energy and attach them to your Psychic or Metal Pokemon in any way you like, and then shuffle your deck. But, I guess as an Energy Acceleration card, this is decent. But as an attacker, it just really falls short because it only does 200 damage. And that's just not going to be enough to really keep up with anything at the end of the day.
No, it's like a really like in a different format, like in an alternate timeline. Like this would be really really powerful, good attack.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just right now it doesn't really make sense.
No. Team Rocket's Persian is a meme card. Play with it at your own risk. The next one would be the Team Rocket's Porygon 2 and Porygon Z, which I'm not sure how good these cards are. I think that they want to be good.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole series of Team Rocket supporters, and they pair up with this card pretty directly in that both of these cards have the R command attack. So for Porygon 2, it's 3 colorless. For Porygon Z, it's 2 colorless. And they both do 20 damage for each supporter card in your discard pile with Team Rocket in its name. And the Porygon Z has an ability that you must discard 2 cards from your hand to use, and it just allows you to draw a card. And so you can fuel 2 extra Team Rocket supporters to your discard pile to draw a card. But to really hit like distinct strong damage thresholds with this, again, we're looking at you need to have 16 Rocket supporters in your discard pile to one-hit KO a Dragapult. And that seems like a lot.
Yeah, I wish it was more than 20. I think that would be the only way that this would be good.
Sure.
But yeah, definitely just kind of underwhelming at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot more in the Pokemon category. Arvin's Greedent, just like sandwiches again. What a
guy.
What a guy. And that's about all I got for Pokemon. We're moving all into trainer cards, more sandwiches, if you will. With Arvin sandwich, yeah, it doesn't really do much for me. It's potion, but if it's an Arvin Pokemon, it's a little bit better. But I think importantly, we have Cynthia's Power Weight. It's a tool card that basically just reads Cynthia's Pokemon. This card is attached to get 70 more hit points.
Yep.
So just pretty nice. As most gimmicks go, this one's not too bad. Plus 70 is actually a decent amount of hit points, and especially right now when there's really not a lot of easy ways to remove tools. We have the one, what is it? Not Ruffian, is it? Yeah. Okay, Ruffian. That's about the only one, and that's the supporter that's not that good. So, yeah, this could see some play in the Cynthia's Garchomp deck or something like that. Like maybe as a one of early game to help you survive and just build up your hand size and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, making Garchomp 400 HP is definitely a notable, that's a big wall to get through. But definitely. I think that at the end of the day, like you said, maybe as a one of, because I do think that the tool card that Garchomp's going to get a lot more mileage out of is going to be that Power Glass.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But seeing this as an option, it's definitely better than Bravery Charm, and that card sees tons of play.
Yeah.
So I would not at all be surprised if you're playing a Cynthia's deck, you should probably put at least one of these into your deck.
Right. And it might prevent your Roserade from getting knocked out from Dusknoir or something like
exactly.
that. Yep. Or early game, you can attach this to your basic Pokemon and get them out of range from some KOs or something like that. We've seen that, in Dragapult even running Bravery Charm and stuff. Just to for Bidoof maybe, but more to keep your bench Pokemon alive early game.
Yep.
Some reprints here. This is, I guess, not MC's chatter, but very similar. I guess we haven't really seen this mechanic, but it's not that good, so we don't
No,
really need to
that
talk
card's
about
pretty
it.
bad. But we do have energy recycler
Yeah, there
coming
you go.
back. That's just shuffle up to 5 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your deck. This card notably saw a lot of play with Lost Box when Kyogre was in the deck in particular. I'm not sure if any deck really takes advantage of this card right this second, but it definitely is worth noting that it exists and has the potential to see play if a deck really strongly wants to specifically put a lot of energy back into the deck.
Yeah. Yeah, could be good. Definitely something to keep in the back of your mind is in the format.
Yep.
All
We
right,
already
so we
talked
talked
about
about
Ethan.
it. Yep, go ahead. The next one, I guess, is Granite Cave from Stevens. So that's just the 30 HP buff, or I guess less damage to Stevens Pokemon. So we won't go back. We get a reprinted Judge. This is notably a G regulation card. So that means
Good
that
point.
it will rotate before the rest of the cards in this set. So this is one thing that Pokemon's done with the regulation marks. So in this set, we have Judge and we have Professor's Research.
Yep.
Both of those cards are from earlier regulations than the rest of the set. So they print Judge out, I guess, just to look cool. This guy looks pretty wild. To be honest, I don't think I've ever worn shorts those colors. But yeah, just to get cards out of the format a little faster, I think, and keep things going,
Sure.
keep things fresh. So we get cool reprints like this that don't affect the timeline for legality. So that's kind of nice.
Yep. Next up, another reprint. So we have Sacred Ash, very similar to Energy Recycler, except it's for Pokemon. So you can shuffle up to 5 Pokemon from your discard pile back into your deck. If you're really on that Misty train, you can put your 4 Psyducks back.
Yeah.
More power to you. Have fun with it.
For sure.
It's tough for me to call either of these cards particularly strong, especially right now when Super Rods exists and it's
better.
kind of more versatile in both of them. And even it's not seeing that much play because Night Stretcher exists.
Yeah, I mean, we had at the very start of this format before we had Super Rod, we had Miriam, which did put back some stuff as a supporter effect and then draw 3 cards, I think.
Yeah.
But that only saw play because there wasn't other recovery cards. I think Super Rod will just probably see more play than both of these combined.
Sure.
So next is Spike Meth. Just kind of going over what we had earlier, but this is just a stadium that lets you once during your turn search for a Marnie's Pokemon, put it in your hand, and shuffle. So it definitely helps with consistency and especially with a stage 2 deck like Grimmsnarl. So yeah, definitely not bad.
Yep. Yeah, notably, it's kind of like, so right now, Frostlost Monkey Dory plays Artisan as its main stadium, and unfortunately, that kind of allows opposing Monkey Dory decks to more easily set up their Monkey Dory and make your game plan a little bit more difficult. With Spikemuth, unless your opponent is playing an exact mirror match, it only benefits you. And so that's kind of what you ideally get out of the stadium when you're playing a deck, is you want it to benefit you and you hope it does not benefit your opponent as well. So I definitely
imagine Frostlass, Grimmsnarl mirrors, dude.
That sounds awful.
Yeah,
awful.
I don't want to live in that world.
So next, though, we'll dive into the suite of Team Rocket trainers, and the first one we see here is Team Rocket's Archer. It's a supporter card that you can only play if any of your Team Rocket's Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Each player shuffles their hand into their deck. You draw 5, your opponent draws 3. So it's kind of like a mix between several different cards, and it reminds me the most of Roxanne, I think, except the stipulation, instead of having a prize card stipulation, the requirement is you basically have to be a dedicated Team Rockets deck or something that somehow forces your opponent to knock out a Rockets Pokemon. And if your opponent knocks out like a Tarantula and then you say, no, you only get 3 cards now, that's pretty good. Like, this card is strong.
It really is. It's a very strong disruption. I mean, notably, Roxanne, you had to wait till your opponent was on 3 prize cards remaining.
Exactly.
So essentially, their board was much more established. This is more like an unfair stamp in the power level. where it's basically, oh, you knocked out one of my Pokemon. All right, now you're down to 3 cards.
Yep.
And this is kind of like the disruption we were talking about a little bit with the blip bug. I guess you could slip their hand down to 3 and then try to control their top deck. But I don't think it's that good. But anyway, it's still good disruption for Rockets for sure. I
Yep.
think Rockets cards will definitely play that. We go to Rockets Ariana. It says draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. If all of your Pokemon in play are Team Rocket's Pokemon, draw until you have 8 cards in hand instead. So straight up draw till you have 8 with no real downside if you're running a Team Rockets deck. Very, very strong. We talked about Lily in our time capsule as, you drew 8 the first turn of the game. Drawing up to 8, we complain about draw till you have this many cards in your hand. And there reaches a threshold where it is just pretty strong, right? Like,
Right.
even if it's like a weaker effect than a discard draw 7 or something like that, draw till you have 8 really works out well for a lot of decks, especially like setup decks where you want to hold on to 1 or 2 pieces like a rare candy, and then you can draw into the remaining pieces. So that's nice.
Yeah, and you still have cards like Ultra Ball to thin excess cards out of your hand to make it a little bit better. And in conjunction with all of this, we also have this very powerful stadium card, Team Rocket's Factory. This says once during each player's turn, if that player played a supporter card with Team Rocket in its name from their hand during that turn, that player can draw 2 cards. So you can Ariana up to 8 and then draw 2 more. Why not?
Yeah, that
And
seems crazy.
it's not even when you play the supporter though. So it's like you could do Ariana, play some cards, search your deck with Nest Ball, thin it out a bit more, and then draw 2. And you can do that every turn you play a Rocket supporter.
Yeah,
Definitely a strong
unreal.
card.
Speaking of more Rocket supporters, we have Rockets Giovanni, which says switch your active Team Rockets Pokemon with one of your bench Team Rockets Pokemon. If you do, switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. So for those that remember Guzma, this is essentially that, but for Team Rockets Pokemon when you have Team Rockets Pokemon in play. So Guzma, probably one of the most broken Gust supporters of all time. We talked about it in the time capsule again. This is that. So I mean, you're able to take advantage of that Morpeko with free retreat, or not Morpeko.
Mimikyu.
Mimikyu? Thank you. With free retreat, and then just able to kind of go from there. So this definitely, I don't know. I think this is these. We talked about a lot of this stuff, and we'll get into some more of them. So we'll just keep going over it, and then we'll have a little summary at the end of it.
Sure. And then notably, you can do your Guzma effect and draw 2 cards.
Yeah.
But so then
Crazy.
you have Team Rocket's Great Ball, which is literally capturing Aroma, but for Team Rocket's Pokemon.
Yep.
If you get heads, you get an evolution. If you get tails, you get a basic. I wouldn't think that this card is that strong, but from every list I've seen of the dedicated like Team Rocket's Mewtwo deck, they all play this card. And I guess it's just strong enough that, but since most of the time you want, I guess it's because
I think it's for like stage 1s and 2s.
Yeah, maybe.
There's not a lot of search for those right now.
Just an additional copy to go find more stuff, maybe. Team Rocket's Intruder Robot is not worth talking about.
No.
But the big card that kind of brings a lot of these supporters together is Team Rocket's Receiver. So we had this is again another callback, very reminiscent in a lot of ways to kind of various supporters we've seen throughout the game. So you got like the Roxanne similar card, the similar card to Guzma, and now you have Team Rocket's Receiver, which is very similar to Halon Transceiver from back in the day, except not quite as powerful in that it only allows you to search your deck for a supporter and put it into your hand on an item card, which just proves to you how broken Halon's Transceiver was. But this card is still extremely strong, and we'll get into a couple of other supporters that kind of add to this power. But saying on demand, oh man, I need Boss for game, or I need to Giovanni for game. Let me go find it. Oh man,
gosh.
my hand's really small. I need to draw until I have 8 cards. Let me go find that. And so it just seems like an auto 4 of in every Rocket deck for sure.
Yep. We have Team Rocket's Petrol, which says search your deck for a trainer card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your deck. So similar to Skyla, this allows you to get stadiums, which is nice. You could even play this in decks that aren't Team Rockets to search out specific items like your Ace Spec or your stadium for turn. So there's definitely some advantages to this. Like same thing with like we had Skyla where it's awesome play. This is a little bit faster of a format, so probably this isn't as good.
I still
Um,
could see it being a one of, I
yeah.
think, in a lot of
Oh yeah,
ways.
especially if you're running the receiver for
Yeah.
sure.
And I think in a lot of ways, like we've talked about kind of the weakness of Arvin in the current format. And I
Hmm.
think specifically because it says trainer card, you can go find other supporters. Like you said, you can go find stadiums. So in a lot of ways, I think that this actually might just be better Arvin at this exact moment. But
Okay.
it's a little bit less power in the sense that you don't find two cards with it. You only find one. But
Yeah.
instead, you get the versatility of being able to find any trainer. And then the last Team Rocket supporter to talk about is Team Rocket's Proton, which notably has the text, if you go first, you may use this card during your first turn. And it is just search your deck for up to 3 basic Team Rocket's Pokemon. And so this is the Bridget of the Team Rocket engine, or the Halon Mentor of the Team Rocket engine. So you get your 2 to 4 copies of Proton in your deck. You have 4 Rockets receiver. You suddenly have super consistency for playing Proton on turn 1 going first. Get a bunch of Rockets Pokemon set up and get yourself established and ready to go for turn 2. And if you have that factory card in play, you draw 2 cards.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, very, very strong. Probably the most strong setup card we've seen since Bridget. Is
Yeah.
that what you said? So definitely cool to see kind of a reprint of that card. And like the same mechanic essentially. Real quick, Venture Bomb. It's kind of a gimmick. Just flip a coin. If heads, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If tails, put 2 damage counters on your active. So maybe in a deck where you don't mind damaging your active, this would be okay, I guess.
Yeah,
But
like the things that I've seen this C play in so far are like Archaladon, which people are now including Monkey Dory in, or in
okay,
Hop Zacian decks because you already wanted to play Monkey Dory. And
sure.
so it just means that no matter what, you're putting 2 counters somewhere on your opponent's board.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. In that case, it seems a lot better, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. And then getting near the end, we have Team Rocket's Watchtower, which is a really strong stadium. It says colorless Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponents, have no abilities. So just a hard counter to some of the more strong Pokemon we've seen come out in the last few formats, like Pidgeot EX, Noctowl, and then I guess what else? I'm kind of drawing a blank.
There's some subtle
Like the
positive ways.
Dunsparce.
Yeah, shuts up
Yeah.
the Dunsparce, but there are some positive ways you can play this too in some weaker cards.
Oh
But
yeah.
like Slacking EX, you can
Yeah.
turn off his abilities, so you can allow your Slacking to always attack. But the big thing is going to be shutting off the Pidgeot, shutting off the Noctowl, and trying to prevent your opponent from setting up with those powerful search based abilities for sure.
Yeah. So definitely, I think it'll see some play for sure. And then the last trainer we have is TM Machine. It says search your deck for 3 Pokemon tool cards with technical machine in their name, reveal them, put them in your hand, and then shuffle your deck. So it could see some play. It's a gym promo, so I'd probably just kind of, chilling. If you have a deck that is trying to chain like the Divas, like we talked about, maybe this is worth like an inclusion for that. But I don't know. That doesn't really seem that good.
No, and it's one of those things where it's like, unfortunately, like while Arvin still exists, this card seems bad. Maybe if you really need to search tool cards once Arvin rotates, you can play that petrol to find TM Machine to go find your tools.
Sure.
But I think by the time Arvin rotates, the TMs might also rotate, so maybe that combo will never exist. And then the last thing, we've talked about it a lot, we have here's the artwork for Team Rocket Energy. So you can see it's purple, has the darkness symbol. That means that it is dark and psychic at the same time, provides 2 energies, and notably, it can only be attached to Team Rocket's Pokemon. So if it's attached to any Pokemon that is not a Team Rocket's Pokemon, you discard the card. Love this text. This is the type of double energy that I can really get behind, in that it is not just a universal, provides 2 energy to anything. I like
Yeah.
things like this, or like Rapid Strike Energy is another good example, or
Yeah.
things that have a drawback or a requirement to activate them, like Reversal as an example. Like things like
Yeah.
that are way better than Double
Double
Colorless,
colorless.
or even Double Turbo felt a little bit too ubiquitous to me.
Sure. At times. this definitely seems like the kind of gimmick I can get behind, where you definitely like. I don't know. We can talk about it now that we're kind of through it all, but Team Rockets has a lot of potential, and there seems to be so many great cards, so many great supporters and tools and or item cards and all this stuff, that it's almost like too big to fail, in a lot of regards. And there's a lot of versatility, and this kind of energy ties it all together, with
Sure.
allowing you to have psychic and dark attackers, two of the best historically best types in the game. So I definitely think uh, there's a lot to explore with this set. I'm excited to see kind of what comes out of it, and where we go from here.
Yeah. But that being said, this took a long time to get through this time. I feel like this is one of the
Yeah,
bigger sets or had kind of more cards in it that were at least worth mentioning than a lot of other sets I've had recently. Um, so I don't think, unfortunately, we're going to have time to get into any predictions for Utrecht or Melbourne this weekend. But stay tuned for those results. We'll definitely discuss them next week, heading into Portland the following weekend. But we hope that you've enjoyed this journey through the Destined Rivals set. If you are not going to either that regional or special event this weekend, go see if your local pre-release is happening. Get signed up for it. I know that there's been a lot of interest for the set in particular. So if you do need to pre-register, make sure that you get that out of the way. But if you're interested in following John or I further, links to our socials will be in the description of the episode. We would definitely appreciate it if you would give the show a follow or a subscription on whatever podcasting platform you're on, or if you're watching this over on YouTube, if you would subscribe to the channel there, we'd appreciate that as well. Any like, follow, comments, subscriptions, anything like that, super great. We're super appreciative. And if you stuck around to the very end of this and have heard this whole spiel, really appreciate you for getting through
yeah.
the gargantuan episode that we are providing this week.
Yeah, I mean, we every time we do a set review, it's almost like a here we go, Aaron. Going back to it, because it is it's a long session, but I think it really helps if you're a new player trying to digest the metagame,
Yeah,
or an older, more experienced player trying to figure out like what decks, what cards to include on their decks. Just to hear somebody else's thoughts is always helpful.
for sure.
So I definitely see there's a lot of value in it, and we're happy to help with that. We're always happy to help people kind of form their own opinions and take away things on their own, as opposed to just regurgitating stuff they've seen online. So we're happy to help with that.
Perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself. So, with that being said, like we said, we will be discussing the results of the events happening this weekend on next week's episode. So, look forward to that. But until then, John and I will see you all on the Battle Frontier.
Have a good week.